Our fire is burning, the long night draws near. All who need comfort are welcome by here. We'll dance neath the stars and toast the past year. For the spirit of solstice is still living here. We'll count all our blessings while the mother lays down, with snow as her blanket covering the ground. Thanks to the mother for the light that she brings. She'll wake up to warm us again in the spring. The poor and the hungry, the sick and the lost, these are our children, no matter the cost. Come by the fire, the harvest to share, for the spirit of solstice is still living here. The fire is burning, the long night draws near. All who need comfort are welcome by here. We'll dance neath the stars and toast the parsley, for the spirit of solstice is still living here. The spirit of solstice is still living here.
Badow.
Hail, hail,
Love that.
hallelujah. That was beautiful.
That was
Absolutely,
great,
it was. Absolutely. Oh, man. Wow. Well, speaking of solstice, hail the necromantic Santa that is, and hail the pagan roots of the true Christmas lore. How are we doing today, boys?
Doing well. What's happening?
Good, man. What's that?
Wonderful, wonderful, man. Thanks for the invite today.
For
Of course.
So typically, we always hear people talk about Santa Claus at this time and how it's connected to Odin. But we kind of wanted to do something a little bit different, and talk about just the different traditions associated with Christmas and where they come from, and maybe some of the esoteric symbolism behind them. Because we don't really talk about some of the smaller ones like mistletoe or laurel, or like the wreaths that people hang, things like that. Odin and Santa is always a big one, or the reindeer, which the reindeer are interesting. I think we're going to get into some reindeer esotericism, right, Gabe?
Oh, yeah. Does the Pope shit in the woods?
yes, he does.
Yeah. Have you guys ever heard of the prickle? The prickle like tradition?
Prickle.
Prickle
P.
pear?
Yeah, so
Like talking about the prickle pear, maybe?
No, not the pear. It's just called a prickle, and basically people take a green ornament and they put it on the tree, and then the first child to wake up and find the green ornament that's hidden in the tree gets to open the first present. I never heard of that story before, but I came across it when I was looking up different traditions and whatnot. So it's just a little one. I was curious if anybody else has ever heard of that before.
Sounds interesting.
No?
I've got the 12 nights of the Yule that have different associations for each night. And so there's a whole bunch of stuff packed into that. So if you the first night is the Mother Night, and the sacred to the Frigg and Freya and Disir. I'm not even going to try to pronounce some of these names right now. We can get back to that. The second night of the Yule is the Wild Hunt, sacred to Odin and the ancestors. The third night of the Yule is sacred to Mani and the darkness. The fourth night is sacred to Aegir, Njord, and Freyr. The fifth night of Yule is sacred to community. The sixth night of Yule is sacred to ear and healing. Seventh night of the Yule, sacred to Thor and children. The eighth night of the Yule, sacred to Skadi and Ullur. The ninth night of Yule, sacred to Odin and fathers. 10th night of the Yule, sacred to Sunna and light. The 11th night of the Yule, sacred to Valkyries and warriors. And the 12th night of the Yule, Wassail, sacred to the divine friends and Oath Night. Glad Yule to everyone. Hail. And so those are the 12 nights that we have there with all their various associations. And I'm sure there's any more we're going to go over tonight too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the Yule the Yule is interesting too because it kind of correlates to Hanukkah as well, and there's some, they kind of weave in and out of sharing similar things, and it's just so strange like this. I just got done watching American Gods. Great show, by the way. I heard it's an even better book. I need to do that. But the concept of it was incredibly fascinating because, we're in a society where we pay homage to gods in a sense, like gods in a sense of like, we are worshiping something. We are spending our time and our energy dedicated to something. And a lot of them don't have as much archetypal meaning as our ancestors held. Very, very true and close to heart. And that's why I think today's episode is really important because, just like in American Gods, we can go back to the old ways and have and pay homage to that, and then maybe find ourselves closer in connection to ourselves and in nature. And that's really what I think one of the main messages that we're trying to get across with this is, and everybody listening, you guys are so amazing and absolutely spectacular that you're already on board with a lot of these things. So feel free to put in the chat anything that we're missing, anything like that. But I don't know, we should probably go around the circles here. We got 6 humans here ready to divulge. Yes,
let me say one thing real quick though, is that a lot of people think that some of these pagan practices are evil or whatever, but when you look deeper into them, there's a lot of beauty that's deep rooted into it. So it's not as horrible and awful as people make it out to be sometimes.
Yeah, of course. I mean, just because they called Odin a necromancer because he held he had these powers to bring people back from the dead or to talk to the dead. That's actually, isn't that beautiful? That's not evil. I mean, there could be some use of necromancy that could be that could have ill intent, but talking to grandma every now and then ain't gonna hurt nobody. I have a poem here from the Dreams of Balder. This is Odin, the great necromancer, for the dead witch death Galders he reads, until she had to arise and spoke, though dead. The 12th one I can, if up in a tree I'll see the hanged dead swing, so I carve, and the runes colors, that this body cometh and speaks me unto. There's a poem.
All right.
Yeah. So let's go around in circles and everybody introduce themselves and what we're doing here, and
say a little. If you got anything to say too, say it.
Yeah, say it.
Right on. Slick Dissident is my channel name over there on the YouTubes. I am Gabriel. You'll also find me on the Universe. I'm going to jump on there right after this. And I'm also down with the Weaving Spiders webs. Catch me over there on Saturdays, weaving all the way through till Sundays. And tonight I'm hoping to bring a whole lot of, the astrotheology, the reading of the stars, There are quite a few very fascinating characters in the heavens, more than I originally thought. I thought I had it figured out when I found Santa's sleigh, encoded into the Big Dipper. But it turns out there's a whole lot more layers to the story in the heavens we can lay to bear and share tonight. So that's my contribution.
Beautiful, Gabe.
Excellent.
Thanks, Gabe. Hey, Indy Sage. I'm glad to be on the show tonight. I'm going to be going over some stuff on Yule lore, from the Yule elf over to the Yule goat. And we'll be exploring a lot deeper stuff as well, and some astrotheology, some esotericism, some other different associations. And I'm going to be looking at a lot of stuff from Scandinavia. Bring some of that to the table tonight. And I know we're trying to look at a lot of Irish stuff as well, too. And so thanks, guys. Glad to be on the show.
Yeah.
Cheers, Indy.
I'm going to look into some wreaths, mainly laurel, mistletoe, and holly, and talk about a little bit of the esoteric goodness behind those ideas and symbolism.
Nice.
Nice.
I am Mario from Symbolic Studies. You can find all my stuff at symbolicstudies.com. And, I'm fascinated that Santa comes from the North Pole. So I've been thinking about, I think about Northern symbolism regardless. But, this is the time of year where it really comes through. And so I have some Northern stuff to share in regards to Christmas. And then also the mercurial expressions that I see within the story of Santa. So he's a very mercurial character. I think that's where maybe his roots are. So, yeah, that's what I'm here for. Thanks for having me, dude.
Of course, man. Yeah, this is your time to shine, right?
Thank
This time of the year, I bet you get hit up a lot when people are thinking about North Pole and polar symbolism. They're like, calling Mario.
And I am Nomad, and I'm just here to hang out and listen and learn from all these beautiful people. If you guys want to connect with me, though, you can find me at nomad.art. That's GNOMAD.art.
Cheers. Glad to have you, brother.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.
I'm Balderson. I'm just here to be redundant and look really German for everybody. So
We appreciate that, man.
Excellent. Hail.
hell.
Oh, so yeah. So where do we begin? Where do we start?
I got a good point to bring forward.
Please.
It was always when these projects come into my life, they seem to align with the stars in fascinating ways. So I thought I would share this with everybody, that this meeting of these wonderful studs coming together on this fascinating evening is quite remarkable, because there is an alignment of the planetary bodies right now, and it's actually articulating quite convincingly. It's articulating the alignment of the reindeer of Santa's sleigh. And I would not be so sold on it if it wasn't absolutely and utterly perfect, with Mars leading the reindeer at the head of the sleigh. It's literally Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer at the head of the alignment. Yeah, homie's got this image I put together. This is actually going on for the next week. This goes on for an entire week. So you can see Mars at the top.
Yep.
And I'm actually...
That's awesome.
And then Uranus. So then they're actually pairing off. They're even pairing off such that every other one is further away, exactly as it would be on a profile shot of a Santa sleigh, so that you would see the further reindeer in the background. It's a perfect profile. So I thought that was really fascinating. And then I've been fixated on the Enneagram. So I pulled up the Enneagram and put it onto all the reindeer. And I wonder if we could do a personality profile on all of Santa's reindeer. That would be a fun side project.
It's hilarious.
It looks like they're almost going along the golden ratio too. Or Fibonacci or something.
Yeah, man. So ho ho ho, and Merry Christmas to all.
I
We
like
have
how I like how their antlers are almost like little trees.
Do you
That's super
imagine
interesting,
Mars?
dude.
You imagine Mars, the war planet, being this little sissy that nobody will let play with him though?
Oh, that's generally how. Yeah, it's generally how it goes, right?
Why he's so angry?
This guy has got that. He's
Yeah.
got that dichotomy going on. Well, when you sent me that video about this alignment that we're going through, like the celestial alignment that's happening right now, I was kind of mind blown because that's a lot of energy. And then, oh goodness, we're fractalized here on the screen. But I went out last night and I actually could see. I could see it. I could see the planets like they were actually in like a straight line, and I was like, "Wow, that's pretty nuts." And then coming into the time of year that we're coming into, that there's a lot of celestial energy work at play with that sky clock stuff, uh, and to think about it being like kind of like a chariot pulling this god, this archetypal godlike figure,
right.
it's bringing
You know,
everybody these gifts.
and
Or
knowing
cool.
what we knew, if we wanted to, like if we were really, Fruit Loops off the wall, we could say the prophecy is being fulfilled. This is the year. The Santa prophecy is fulfilled. But I'm not going to go there.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's 2022. It's been pretty nuts. There's been a lot of
Has
stuff
been.
happening, I mean, and for the powers that be that love astrology, this alignment probably was been sought after for quite some time. I mean, it's pretty significant. So that's really cool, man. Thanks for bringing that up, dude.
Do
Yeah,
we know
love to
when
do
the
a
last
personality
time?
test on the reindeer.
Do we know when the last time this alignment happened? No. Maybe something
No.
good to look into.
Yeah, because the order of the planets is actually kind of fascinating. They are stacking in a way that is quite unique. Having even the distal planets interspersed in between is really fascinating. It is. It's really something to think about.
Yeah, because if this
It,
lore has been around for so long, it would be interesting to see kind of maybe where it started, right? They had to have observed
yeah,
it at some point, I would imagine.
yeah, and that's kind of the thing I like when I take like groups of data sets, like 8 reindeer and all the personality types, and try to lock them in. If you get like an eight position lock, then it's like 8 times as confirming. But I sent you one more there, homie. Can you pull up the Orion? Like we all know about Orion's belt lines up for to point at the dog star. Everybody's seen the zeitgeist, right? Everybody?
Mm-hmm.
Ev-
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, we all know that Orion's belt lines up with the dog star. Well, recently I've discovered this winter triangle that reads to me very much like the Santa's bag full of goodies and gifts for the
Oh,
kiddos.
oh,
Can you zoom in at all, homie?
yes, I should be able to.
So this winter triangle is right off the shoulder, literally off the shoulder of Orion. I believe that that corner of the triangle is Betelgeuse or Betelgeist, and so you've got the dog, the Canis Major, at the bottom of the triangle, and there's even a nebula inside this triangle that is called the Christmas Tree Nebula, inside
Mm.
Santa's bag of stuff. So all of the ingredients for the Grinch Who Stole Christmas is encoded in the heavens. It always has been, including the little dog that jumps behind him quite a few times in the rollout of the action scenes. So yeah, I thought I'd share this as well. That Santa is also Orion, the big sky hero.
That's awesome.
Is there any lore of Orion also being Odin in the sky? Or what is Odin's constellation in the sky, if any?
Mercury.
Balderson?
Everybody's waiting for Norse Baldy to say something.
Yeah, I've
Tell
never
us,
heard him.
Baldy.
I've never heard him identified with a planet or with a constellation. He would be one of the wandering stars.
Mm-hmm.
The wandering. So like the primary ones were the wandering, and you want.
Oh, they zapped him.
This is the Christmas tree cluster, NGC 2264.
Oh wow!
The cone nebula, Christmas tree cluster. It's beautiful. There's the Eye of Odin right there.
Yeah, Balderson, would you agree? Like I like to think of Jupiter as very Odin-esque because of the storm of Jupiter being much like the one eye. Does that vibe with you, Baldy?
I didn't hear any of that. My cat turned my computer off. What?
Man.
Catastrophe.
What planet do you associate with Odin, Balderson?
That would definitely be Mercury.
Yeah,
Mercury. Okay.
yeah, exactly. That's the deal. And so Santa's connection with Odin, what a lot of people like to say, it just fits with the mercurial sort of stuff that I've been looking into with him. And so also Mercury, to me, it's fascinating. The symbolism of Mercury aligns very nicely with Northern symbolism, with the Axis Mundi world tree, things like that. And so the fact that Santa comes from the north, to me, is just like this very clear sync that he's a mercurial figure, pretty much, the way I tend to look at it.
Well, and
then also
Polaris is the star at the top of the tree, and then Odin's wain or Odin's wagon, which swings around the tree, and that's the entire motif that you got going on right there. It's fascinating to me that they try and put it on Christian at all. Like reindeer, there's no reindeer in Israel. There's no reindeer in the Middle East. Like, come on now. And why is he wearing a damn furry outfit? Like he's not in the desert. This is ridiculous. The reindeer are flying because they're eating Amanita muscarias, which is why everything's red and white. And then the reindeer like it so much they actually piss in their own mouth after they've eaten it and trip again. Like, man, I gotta do that again. Like, yeah,
right.
And honestly, I think the second trip is probably a little bit stronger because they're able to oxidize things better that second time around, to be honest. And I think that's the reason behind it. Yeah, similar to like the coffee beans that you can only eat after them little muskrat things or whatever the hell they are. Eat them and poop them out, and then they're like $1 million coffee beans.
Baby bird, you the cat shit. You got to be the human centipede to a cat in order to digest this coffee. Interesting.
Yeah, well, and I think the same thing's kind of happening with some of the things in the like if you ate cannabis right off the plant, it's not decarbonized, so you don't get the psychoactive effects out of it. So I think that it's that second time around they really get the punch. So they drink all their own tea. Make sure they trip again. The humans are also partaking, which is part of why the reindeer are flying. The one that really bothers me, the one that I really irritates me, is the Christmas tree in and of itself, because the tree was sacred, and the whole reason that they decorated it with little things was because you included the land whites in your celebration. And so and then these people lived in a hut. Could you imagine cutting down a big ass fucking tree? People didn't own second story, 2-story buildings with vaulted ceilings and all that. They're in a hut. The tree was outside, and the tinsel and the things like that were to try and include the land whites in it, and little gifts and food for them. The other creatures that are suffering through. It's like if you live like I do, like right now, every day during the winter we watch, and the line where the sun hits our property climbs up and up and up on these trees. And like right now, where today's Yule, the sun quick going, that's if the sun was out today, it wouldn't even hit my chicken coop down there. It's like 10 feet up that tree line. Well, then after Yule, instead of losing sun every day, which is miserable because now none of us have seen the sun on the property for over a month. It's not touched your skin, no nothing. You're kind of depressed. And now the sun is going to turn around in reverse after this and going to start getting lower and lower until it actually is hitting us and touching us, and we get to enjoy the sun again and feel that life and light, you know. So it's a really big deal, and even the land spirits are part of that. Like the sun can't go away. That means the world's ending. That means the wolf is eating the sun. Ragnarok comes. It's time to fight. Like, we don't want that. Nobody wants to die today. Most of us.
Yeah,
So
we're all going into the cave this next week.
Yeah. So you know, the tree was very sacred, and you wouldn't have cut it down, and you would have decorated that outside and went outside and included the creatures, the things of your land in your celebration of this time that's coming. So that one always irritates me.
That's right. I hear you, man. Yeah, that makes way more sense. Regarding the reindeer, real quick, you know, I'm just collecting Ursa Major and Minor correspondences left and right, you know. But one of the interesting ones that I read the other day in a friend's library, actually, about Native American, North American indigenous peoples, there were some groups that considered Ursa Major to be 7 reindeer, which I think is really fascinating. And also the image that you showed, Gabe, there were 7 reindeer, right? Rudolph was like the 7th one or the first one, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's fascinating. And then also regarding the hut, because you mentioned it, the hut deserves like to be like decoded and actually understood for what it represented. You know, it was not for no reason. The reason why it was designed that way. And I actually have something to share that kind of fills in that gap of what that's all about. So I'm sharing my screen. Hopefully you guys can see it. Can you see my screen?
No. Roman.
Maybe does it have to be over here?
Here it's coming. There we go.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I shared this with Juan the other day. So I was at a friend's house. They have a huge library, cruising through some books. And I opened up this book called Earth and Sky, Visions of the Cosmos in Native American Folklore. And they're showing a very simple structure. You could obviously, this could just be a simple hut as well, because the design is essentially the same. And there was this idea that you wanted to mirror what was going on in the heavens on earth with your community, with your home, spiritually, all of these different things. And so under a more geocentric perspective, the northern sky and Polaris was a really, really big deal. And so here in this book, they're literally showing that their simple structure that they lived in was meant to mirror what's happening in the heavens, with the opening at the top of the roof literally representing Polaris. And I was just listening to someone last night on Michelle's show, Kyle from Tippecanoe Herbs, and he was saying that a lot of these older yurts and
Great
huts.
chat.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, man. Yeah. I thought it was really cool too. And so he was saying that when you lived in a hut or a yurt type setup, that when it was winter and it was snowing, you would actually exit and enter through that top hole in the hut, you know. And so to me, it's just really fascinating that obviously Polaris has a correspondence with the North Pole and everything else. And so the fact that Santa comes through the chimney, which is just kind of like a newer, updated, modern, kind of reference to the exact same thing, to me is like brilliant. And so I think that's kind of where we got this tradition from, that Santa comes through the chimney. You know, the hearth or the fire used to be like the center of the home.
Mario. That's brilliant.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, it's like a yurt.
And then being from up north, I fully see the people don't realize, like, if you get stuck in a blizzard, the thing to do is actually go into a snowbank and burrow into the snowbank and then shut it. Because if you get feet of snow all around your hut, that's better insulation than anything you can possibly pay for. You are insanely insulated. So literally by doing that, and allowing that to build up around the entire hut like that, their hut would be, you wouldn't hardly have to burn anything. It's no different than an igloo. Igloos, they sit in them things naked because it's so hot and it's barely got a candle flame in there.
Gotcha. Yeah, dude. Great insight there.
Like
so
an
I think it
igloo.
makes tons of sense as well. And so, anyways, that's some of what I got into with Juan. This whole entire relationship of Santa coming through the chimney and what that represents, and how, to me, I think it's just kind of a northern symbol, but just in a modern sort of context.
Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, too, like the the gods, shrinking and coming down through the chimney, or that, like, the being able to transmute your body and to be able to is symbolic of kind of what, like, TP is used for, because we were discussing this the other day as well with somebody, but like architecture changing from having round angles to really hard angles, and the speak in the folklore that energies and spirits are able to zoom and beam in through corners. They can either hide out in corners, but when you have a round, they have to keep moving until they were able to find a stick spot. So you have the opening through the top, just like a rotunda in like a Capitol building. And what they do when they have funeral services for presidents and things, they put them in the rotunda so the spirit is centrifuges and shoots out through the top. But now it's like, you can have energies and spirits and entities stuck in the corners of your house in every single angle, which allows for more magical workings and things. But yeah, just to touch on that, that's pretty interesting. And so Santa coming through the chimney, he's able to come in through there, and I don't know, there's a lot going on.
There's a legend from Siberia about how Santa, Saint Nick, they would call him, would come around in a sleigh with reindeers and throw Amanita muscarium into the yurts during times of famine.
Damn.
Oh, wow.
Help people make it through and give them the right. It helps with give them a little food sustenance, and it help with their minds to help confront, like.
Yeah, we
Right.
all take the stress better if we're a little high. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, a sacred communion. That's beautiful. That's really
It
beautiful.
suppresses your
It
appetite
would best
too,
with
right?
red and white polka dots like the mushrooms.
Yeah, that could be very strategically applied in times of need in the winter for sure. And another thing, we're talking about that chimney. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, the sacred placenta. We're talking about Placenta.
Of course.
This is
the placenta.
This is Placenta Claus.
Whoa, that's a new one
Right.
on me.
That's right. All the abundance is arriving. It's coming through this birthing portal that is the chimney.
In a bag.
That's
Yeah,
right. And
yeah.
the
He
red
gets
bag
small,
is
he
the
gets
sack
big.
red. It's
He
the
gets
red
small,
sack.
he gets big. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice,
bro.
dude.
His
Yeah.
his red sack
Is
full
the
of
sack
gifts,
red.
full of his
And-
family jewels.
Yes, and I have to confess that that's part of why I wanted to lead Valdi into agreeing that Jupiter has this the Saturnian or the Santa like Odin relationship, because of Santa has the red and the white stripes. He's wearing red, but he's got the
now
white.
You're going to have to get Zarelath. Zarelath says Thor is Santa.
Is Santa,
He
right?
had a whole giant presentation on saying Thor is Santa for some of the same things you're listing right here.
Symbolically, yeah. Because Santa's got the white cusps against the red, which is much like Jupiter has the white bands against the red bands, which is really fascinating because those are also the colors of the placenta. The sac is red, and the cord is white. So it has this mostly red with the white trim is integral to the placenta. And it's no mistake that the name is hinting back to that split, that birth trauma of the departure from the Garden of Eden. That is no mistake. It's no coincidence. It's a sacred correspondence.
Don't bring Abrahamic into this. Damn you, Gabe.
It's fun. It's fun to think about Santa as phallic, or some sort of phallic worship.
Uh-huh.
Because you get the common mushroom association, but mushrooms are always phallic representation, and a lot of the Latin name for a lot of mushrooms actually has the word phallus in it. And there's an entire like subgenre of mycelium and mushrooms that are literally called phallic mushrooms. So either way, if you're associating Santa with a mushroom, there's some
Wonderful
sort
little
of phallus
buggers.
there. They are, and phallus worship goes incredibly deep, and it goes all the way back, right? And
Super
so
deep.
this is interesting. I like this. I like this a lot. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
it-
Mercury
Need a
relates to
clip
the phallus.
of phallus worship goes incredibly deep. I need a clip of that line. That should be like a fucking t-shirt somewhere.
And it just
I'm
points
into it.
points down at the crotchal region on the t-shirt. There's an arrow. This says, "Here, baby." Anyways, this is for kids. This is for children. Everybody. Let's maybe steer off of Santa and onto some of these wreaths that Dan wanted to talk about. Dan, you have some. Let's talk about the trees. Let's talk about the plants. What are we worshiping here, bud?
Let's have Indy go because he says he has to go pretty soon. So let him
Yeah.
get
Oh,
out
that's right.
what he's got going on.
All right, yeah, I got the Yule goat right here. Some information. Goes back several thousand years, and there are many ancient myths and legends that show how important this animal was to the ancestors. In some Norse myths, the god Thor, was said to be riding a flying chariot drawn by two goats, and it was believed that the goats Tangrisnir, Gaptooth, and Tannoster, Tooth Grinder, who pulled Thor's chariot,
Yoster. And
food
Yoster.
for the good and his friends. Am I coming in all right over here? Cool. People in Scandinavia were not the only ones to understand the value of the Yule goat. From Slavic mythology, we learned that the sun god Dasbog was replaced by a white goat, Kolyada, Yule, ancient pre-Christian Slavic winter festival, was later incorporated into Christmas, started to honor the god of the fertile sun and the harvest. The Kolyada festivals always had a person dressed as a goat, often demanding offerings in the form of presents. So people would be dressing up like a goat and demand offerings as part of the ritual.
That makes sense. We're about to enter into the Capricorn.
And the goats were carrying a chariot across the sky with Thor.
Oh, yeah, right.
All right.
Yeah. Our buddy Jim actually pulled up some goat-drawn bicycles that have like goats harnessed on to like what is like a cage, and then there's a bicycle behind it, and the goats actually pull the guy along.
So
Right.
I would rather than liken the Yule goat to it's Tan Yoster and Tan Grissner, and I would more liken it to the goat that gets milked for mead over and over because it's a gift giving goat, and it signifies it. That's interesting. There's a lot of goats um, in all of the cosmology. Tan Grissner and Tan Yoster, like you said, they pulled Tor, and they could get killed over and over again. That was their weird deal. That as long as and you didn't want to break any of the bones because then if any of the bones were broken, you set the bones on top of the fireplace overnight, and in the morning the goat's just there again. But if you broke a bone, then the bone was broken also in the morning. They'd have a limp, and so because one of the stories a little boy decides he needs to suck the marrow out of a bone, and in the morning one of the goats ends up developing a limp. But there's a few other goats, and one of them is the Yule goat, and yeah, I think it's supposed to bring presents, mostly things like that. Make sure Christmas is done right. Now, one thing I wanted to say about the reindeer too is with the 8 reindeer, I've always kind of taken that. I think so. The old Germanic calendars supposedly were an 8-month calendar, and so if you took and you looked at that, that's the rotation. That's your rotation. How you tell what time of year it is, and that's winding up and then winding back down. And I've always kind of thought that Santa coming down the chimney, because the sun's basically getting a smaller and smaller rotation and getting closer and closer into Polaris. And then as he's coming down the chimney with glee, that's when everybody's happy because we're getting the large rotation again. We're getting the more sun, and all of that being driven by the constellations, which there was only 8 months in the old Germanic, in the heathen calendar, rather than 12.
That makes sense because our months are off, right? Like October is not the 8th month.
Right.
So
Yeah,
perhaps they
there's
probably
added
aligned
months
at one
in-
point. Yeah. That makes sense.
So that was what was driving basically him winding up and then winding back down. He went back down instead, and that was why it's gleeful.
Nice. Very interesting. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Does anybody have any alchemical connections? The whole chimney thing seems very alchemical.
Well, one thing that came on my radar, because of something Homie Romy sent me, was this a guy who's named Hero of Alexandria, who was like an inventor in Alexandria, and he invented this steam ball that is said to be the very first steam engine. And you heat it up over a fire, and it spins on a pivot. And I'm a little bit convinced, and it is a leap. I'm taking a bit of a leap, but this ball, looking at its general layout, the way it's depicted, I think we could also associate it with the constellation Ars Altera, which is basically a fire, alchemical fire in, I believe it's the South Pole. It's by the Sigma Octantis, and I'll send Homie some pictures. But it's just interesting. This hero guy is clearly going to be an alchemist. You know, he's a metallurgist. In this steam engine that he's generated, it's the only one of its kind in the constellations, so it's unique in that aspect. It's also, its name implies the altar. This is like the sacred altar in the sky. And I want to point out that we are actually in the month that this constellation is signified by. As we go through Sagittarius, we will pass over the minor decade of Ars Alteris, which is this, I believe, is the steam engine that Hero of Alexandria invented. But this kind of blows my mind, because in the news right now, we have the train unions are going to go on strike. And that is the tie-in to the steam engine. This guy invented the very first steam engine. And they're going to the table. They're going to go to the bargaining table as to whether the unions are going to strike or not. So all of this sacred table, sacred sacrifice, and the season of bringing offerings to the table is all signified by this one constellation that I think is the first steam engine from Hero of Alexandria.
Very interesting.
Roman, share my screen.
Oh, here we are. Oh, is this the steam ball?
That's his thing. It's hard to say its name. It's got the funkiest name. It's like an aeoliolia. Aeolia.
Ilipili. Ilipile. Eel. Eel.
Weren't they burning coal for that? Is that the process?
Good question.
Because coal is stockings, right?
You got it. Good weave. Good weave.
Yeah, and it goes through the chimney. Maybe he's just stocking up on like some energy through each chimney is like a little gas station.
Well, it's also, could it be looked at as like your spine of like the I've seen, or like the cane, I've seen that symbolized as like your spine going through your cerebrum or whatever, and like the kundalini, you have the red and the white, sort of like the lower chakra, and then the pure on the other side.
The high
That's
violet.
just one connection I've heard before.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you got it, man. It's all, to me, it's all axis mundi, world axis symbolism, the world tree of the spine. I think it's all expressions of the same sort of thing. But Balderson, I think you have a live show coming up here in a few minutes. So while you're here,
Yeah, I just
I'd
got
love
a
to ask
thing, and
you-
it was like, reminder, be ready to start a live video. I'm like, oh, I'm getting nagged.
The bell rings.
Yeah, just Nomad asked the question about the chimney and alchemy, and maybe if there's any kind of correspondence there. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that specifically, or not, or even alchemy, how it might relate to the North or the pole star or anything. If you have any opinions, would love to hear it. If not, it's all good too.
The idea of the coal in the children's stockings is very interesting. That aren't well behaved. That's very interesting. Because I've always likened coal to like the earthly parts of you that are like when you're doing the alchemical process, the nigredo, that's like the earthly parts. That blackening is the earthly parts of you that's coming out, like so I find that very interesting. But no, other than that, you guys are awesome. Definitely, it's just going to end up being redundant. Love all you guys, and
love you.
You too, man. Yeah.
Love you, Baldy. Good to see you, brother. Happy Yule.
Okay. So Alchemical Santa, part of the Alchemical. There's definitely whether or not it's like a physical stone, right? Like what? So like if you get a lump of coal, what do the good kids get, right? Are they getting a piece of the Philosopher's Stone? Are they getting a little chunk of gold? Are they getting a ruby, or are they getting like a wooden horse to rock upon, or maybe they're getting some sort of like layer shed of their consciousness, and they're able to have some of that mental alchemy. I don't know, but I think as we as a species go through each winter solstice, there's an energy shift with that. So I think the gift that a lot of this dark time brings, and the message of like, are you good or are you naughty, answering to some of your more shadowy aspects, like what are you tapping into? What is your mental thought process like, and what will you receive when the time comes to get a spiritual enlightenment present from the celestial forces that be, whether Odin is Jupiter or Odin is Mercury? I think that's part of the the alchemical process in general, is how much inner work are you doing, and how much homage to the land and to earth and to the stars are we paying, in order to be received with the presence of gnosis, and the presence of enlightenment and the goodness that is, and the internal love that we are blessed with as we ride the night.
Yeah, dude, for sure. I mean, you're saying inner and internal and everything else. Reminds me of the sacred center. The sacred center of this domain to me is the North Pole. In the heavens, it is Polaris, the North Star. So to me, there's just a direct correspondence between these symbols, Northern symbolism, and getting back to center, including your own center, your own true north, right? And so this is an alchemical process. And if you're talking alchemy, Mercury's the man. Mercury, Hermes, Thoth is the man, right? And so I think that there's a direct correspondence with these deities and this central pole or trunk or world axis or whatever you want to say. And I was thinking about it and all of the different mercurial aspects of Santa. And I'm like, okay, he's making a list and he's checking it twice, and that reminds me of Thoth. And he is a scribe as well. He I think, did he bestow writing upon humanity or what have you? But he's always associated right with he has this pen or quill or whatever, and he's taking down notes and whatever. And so to me, this is all part of kind of the same lore and mythology and everything else. So Yeah, that's kind of how I interpret
Thoth-
it. So Mercury being very much alchemical in nature, just in general.
Yes,
I
Thoth
got to
was
point out.
there. He was a scribe of the dead for the what's it called, the ship, the afterlife. He was a scribe of the dead in the Duat, and so he
Right.
Yeah.
would take note and then weigh it against the feather.
That's right, exactly. Thank you. Yes.
I got to point out his name goes back and forth. Thoth, Thoth. So checking it twice has that back and forth. Reading
Nice.
in both directions.
And these figures are often associated with the number 3. And I'm just reminded of the fact that 3 and tree are just one letter difference, right? The thrice great Hermes Trismegistus, as an example. And so all of this stuff to me is just all very mercurial, in nature. And then you bring up the afterlife stuff. And, a lot of people believe that you go to the north upon death. Your soul goes to the north upon death. The Egyptians, how I've heard it phrased at least, is that they exit the horn of a great bull, and this is basically the northern part of Earth, which is the opening of the toroidal field, a Taurus, right, bull, the opening of our electromagnetic spectrum around the planet, the what do they call it, magnetosphere. So lots of the same symbolism, I think.
I love working with Mario every time because, Mario and I are both fascinated by all things northern.
Mm-hmm.
And this year, I've been quite taken in by the lunar standstills and the habits of the system to express itself in predictable ways. In one of the lunar standstill nodes is right there under the shoulder of the bull, or right, like he just mentioned, the horn of the bull. It's just right in that neighborhood there. That Orion is actually just is in the same neighborhood, where we have this hero with the Santa Claus bag. But I want to point out that something that kind of took me was one of my listeners. He put a comment on my channel that pointed out that the word North Node is an anagram for Odin throne. And so the throne of Odin is actually in that neck of the woods, in that location where there's a particular type of an eclipse that is a prolonged eclipse. It's a longer eclipse than most. And so it's a rest point where the planets seem to stop for a prolonged period. And it's focused in this area right there by in Taurus, by Auriga, the charioteer, and I think is also symbolic in Mithraic iconography of slaying the bull. All these things are just, I find them to be even deeper layers of this symbolism of this of the pole in the bowl.
Super interesting.
Absolutely, dude.
Wow. Yeah. The anagram for Odin throne. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you can do the same thing with the south node, because everything has an opposite. So there's the north node is up there near Taurus, right in April to May in that time frame, and then on the opposite end there's a south node. And funny enough, south node is almost a perfect anagram for Odin house, as south can be converted into house, and so that's where the opposite node is kind of on the opposite end of the zodiac. But yeah, things get very visual very quickly, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, house is where you live, is where you rest, and then the throne is where you rule and where you place the power in your hand. So you kind of have those opposing energies there. That's super interesting.
Right.
Take your work home with you.
Yes. Yes.
And Odin's throne might be a chariot. He might do his work on the move.
Yeah, dude, that makes perfect sense. Being mercurial, he's a traveler. Mercury's a traveler, man. He's going all over the place. He's the messenger of the gods. And also, if you're bringing messages, there's a symbolic pouch, that kind of comes along with that. And then I'm thinking of, the sack that Santa brings with him. And then also, just to add real quick, I'm pretty
Full
sure
of
we've talked
letters.
about this before, but you mentioned the bull and the pole. And that is actually my understanding, at least according to Manly P. Hall, this is where the name Abraxas actually comes from. A beer being A-B-I-R, I believe, being a name for bull. And then the axis part is literally the world axis, the pole, right? From the northern part of Earth towards the North Star. And so literally it means like the bull of the pole or something along those lines, which I think is really fascinating and interesting. So just because you brought it up, I thought I would throw that out there. And then also Abraxas being associated with chariots and the chariot wheel. This is the churning of heaven, you know, basically around that central axis, that hub of the wheel that is the North Star.
Man, yeah, that's so I don't know where I read it, but in one of the many articles and passages that I was trying to ingest while getting ready for this stuff, you know, the 8 reindeer is absolutely correspondent to the 8-legged horse of Odin that he rode, and it's very much so it's Sleipnir. You know, very much transmutative qualities that, you know, it's either jumping between dimensions or between parts of the tree, which which is super fascinating. And it's yet again, Odin is like the archetype himself of Odin, and why he's like very heavily worshipped, I feel like, in a lot of like modern occult practices, is because he was so profound of knowledge. He loved knowledge. He had all of the knowledge, and he was a master magical worker. And, you know, like him hanging himself on the tree, or, you know, being a part of the tree and bringing himself to the stretches, to the ends, to the limit in order to peek through the veil. And it's really cool to bring Santa back to the Odin roots, because if we take this time, like I was bringing up earlier, if we utilize this extra dark night that we have, the beautiful depth of darkness, like we just don't do that as a society anymore and go outside and be in the dark. We're so obsessed with artificial light all the time that dark scares us and it's uncomfortable. But really what we can learn from Odin and that archetype is, if we ride the night and be ourselves and be comfortable with our surroundings, then we might be able to tap into an even more deeper knowledge that's already there within ourselves. Being in the cold as well can really do that, because if you need to stay warm, you have to breathe and you have to bring your body through massive pranayama and through your nose, and that internal fire sparks up. So your chimney, so you open your mouth, so Santa can slide through your chimney, baby. You know what I'm saying? You got milk and cookies in there, baby.
I love it, dude. You got it, man. You know, some of this is encoded in the Hermit card. You know, caves and womb symbolism and going within is very much part of what the Hermit card is all about. Hermit, as in Hermeticism, as in Hermes, as in the Hermit card is ruled by Virgo, which is ruled by Mercury itself. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, you're on point with all that stuff. And so when you go within, dude, I mean, that's where there's a lot of transformational energy that you can utilize and grow and everything else. So yeah.
So the word hermit is an anagram for Mithra, which is so powerfully appropriate because of the cave aspect. You know, those Mithraics, they keep it on the down low with their their ceremony.
They were literally underground.
Literally, man, totally. But another thought, I think it's a lesson that some people go their whole life never thinking about, that Thanksgiving comes first. You know, that we give thanks before the season of receiving. You know, and we do a lot of self-deprecating and poking fun at one another for the material aspect of Christmas, but that's just because we forgot that we gave ourselves permission to be this way because we gave thanks for a whole month before. So I think that's something that is built into the system that will always be beautiful, but it will also always be forgotten. So I just wanted to point that out, that we get to be this way because we gave thanks. You know,
that's a great point.
Yeah,
Because
man.
that is
Yeah.
a huge part of the process of changing yourself from within, right? Is that
Yes.
attitude of gratitude, and
Right.
yeah, that is crucial to that change that we seek in the new year, right? So you go through
Yeah.
that whole process, and hopefully
Oh.
you don't just get cold, but you move on to the gifts, the spiritual gifts, which have been perverted for us to all think are material gifts, right? That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Right.
That is,
Yeah.
great way to put that out, Nomad, too. Yeah, man. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Holiday season is like this huge warming up to like have that burst of the new you into the new year. Super
Right.
interesting.
There's
Mhm.
also something
Yeah, the
really
whole naughty
alchemically.
or nice thing. The whole
Oh,
naughty or nice thing kind of goes into like your year review of what you did for that year, you know. So it's kind of like
yes.
going through that review and going into the new year to see what you need to work on and what you need to
Nice.
build off
Yeah.
of.
Oh, that's
Karm-
great, dude. I love that. It's a symbolic death. And there's that whole system
Yeah.
of being born in Cancer, incarnating through Cancer, exiting through Capricorn, related to Saturn, right? And then obviously first day of Capricorn is the solstice. So that's very interesting. And obviously a lot of people say that upon death you go through a life review.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Karmic accounting.
Yeah.
The scales.
I was thinking about what Baldy said about, how the goats, how they, the second time with the psilocybin urine, how the
Mhm.
second time around it's even stronger.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's a classic refining, taking something that's already powerful and making, filtering it,
Concentrate.
refining it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I was thinking of that might be what is often indicated by a second death. We often have ceremonial, we know about living resurrections, but oftentimes they come in pairs. And I wonder about that thing about he was saying about the goats drinking their own urine and getting really stoned the second time. I think of that as like a strange expression of the second death.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because life is a lot more potent and a lot more enjoyable once you have that awakening, that second birth, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The fermented
Yeah.
aspect of that, I love that because fermentation is an alchemical process. It was created through alchemy, right? And and very, very ancient. But it's even when you drink kombucha, you're drinking the byproduct of like yeast and bacteria having gone through that process. And obviously the northern people loved their mushrooms. And one of the great ways to extend the qualities of mushrooms is to in fact ferment it into a mead and put it into a beverage, which some people call beer, they call it like piss anyway, right? Drinking piss with the boys. And so maybe like
Piss drunk.
mushroom beer, yeah, you're piss drunk, right? So who knows?
It makes more sense now, yeah.
Maybe the whole reindeer aspect too of the chariot is it's more of like a familiar or an archetype of like like, hey, like drink a mug of this and you'll be flying your chariot or something. I'm not sure. I like it
There's
though.
also like it kind of correlates, but maybe not. But like the idea of grass-fed beef, that you're eating a cow that has only ate grass, and then
Mhm,
have that process that goes through the cow from only eating the grass instead of
mhm.
the slop or whatnot is actually healthier. So then when you consume it, you're actually consuming more healthy properties than the negative properties. So there's also that transmutation of that, and sort of like eating stronger animals will also make you stronger. So to not eat chicken because they're weak little chickens that can't fly, and to eat big strong like buffalo or big steers would have greater like strength for your own body because you are what you eat type of thing.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, we definitely are we ruminant mammals are really interesting. Like talking about cows and deer and animals that only eat vegetation, they have multiple stomachs that literally one is a fermentation chamber that it ferments the grass and then it regurgitates it into another stomach chamber, and it kind of goes back and forth until it's fully digested. Well, the bull or the cow, through that fermentation process in the stomach, there is a type of mushroom, a psilocybin mushroom, that grows in the cow poop, and it can't, this, like, the spores only get processed through the inner fermentation of ruminant mammals. So then again, thinking about the reindeer, and they are not carnivorous, and so they have those multiple stomachs. So I'm wondering if the reindeer poop itself creates a special type of mushroom, just like the cow does. Or obviously, we talked about the urine, but I am wondering, since ruminant mammals have that type of quality to create a type of psilocybin mushroom, that could be another reason to have them symbolized on the chariot there. Well, the thrones, man, thrones are super interesting. In the antiquated transhumanism work, I step into the crown, the scepter, and the globus cruciger, and then the architecture. But one thing I never really brought up in a lot of the presentations is the powerful throne. The throne that holds and seats upon the stone of destiny. And I don't know if you guys have ever taken like some really potent or powerful crystals or rocks and sit on them, but it feels really good. Like, there's an incredibly grounding energy that's there, and it kind of like, it can induce an enhanced meditation. So if you take that and you add a lodestone or a magnet to it, and other even if you're tapping into some sort of higher veiled echelon of consciousness through taking a psychedelic and really exploring those realms of the Yggdrasil tree itself, then sitting on top of those really vibey rocks that have that ancient knowledge tapped into them, that are that time crystal. And so the throne is really important, whether or not reindeers are allegory, for
So
drugs.
this brings up a fun story. I didn't expect this to come up, but I used to live in Boulder, Colorado, and I can attest to the power of sleeping on really powerful quartz-rich locations. It does affect your dreams, and some of us are more sensitive to that than others, but it's a real thing. And one birthday of mine in August, I went up to it's called, the Rocky Mountains. They call them the Flatirons in Boulder. And I was watching my constellation, Leo constellation, was having a meteor shower. And I was up there just having a sacred spliff to myself, communing with nature. Yeah, a real sacred moment. And as I start to gather my energy to, kind of come out of my meditation and move back into the world, I realized that something only like 12 feet away from me shifted as well. And it was a gigantic elk with the largest rack I've ever seen in my life. He
Wow.
was such a stud. He was amazing. But what took me is that I was only then realizing he had been there for the whole maybe hour, an hour and a half, and even as silent as I was making myself to be as present as possible with the moment, he still slipped by my radar. He was still like more still than I was capable of being, I just thought I'd maybe mention him because there is something about the stones that you're near, in the energy and the timing, and
Yeah, dude, absolutely.
And
That's
that's
cool.
maybe that's another thing. Maybe that's why the reindeer has to come into this equation, is because they're so calming and soft and gentle, like the snow. They bring a peacefulness with their energy.
But we were thinking that perhaps Rudolph is associated with Mars. Is that contradictory at all?
It kind of is, but I think in all things it contains its opposite, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Just wondering, because that alignment is super interesting, and I actually love that just analogy, and that's the beautiful part of this, right? Is we can find value in all of these stories that help us evolve, And so, yeah, I'm seeing the stars align with Mars at the beginning. That's beautiful. But then seeing like how we can actually draw spiritual enlightenment from that, right? Of like the deer or the reindeer leading us in peace throughout this season of change. I think that's another beautiful point.
Regarding the throne, real quick, it's my understanding, the way I kind of perceive it, is that the throne itself, the concept of a throne, is like a microcosm of a macrocosm. So generally chairs have 4 legs, right? These are the 4 cardinal directions. These are the 4 corners of Earth or the universe or whatever. You oftentimes see chariot cards, chair as in, right, the chair that you sit on and everything. A lot of times the charioteer is surrounded by 4 posts, same sort of idea. And then a lot of times he literally has like a firmament sort of thing right above him. And or it'll be fabric with like stars within it. It'll be blue fabric with stars, and the Rider Waite, at least, he has that North Star right on top of his head. And it's the 7th card of the major arcana, the 7 stars of Ursa Major Minor, the 7 creative powers, 7 traditional planets, etc. But the throne of God is at the north. He resides at the north. Sometimes you'll see God on a throne, and he's surrounded by the 4 the tetramorphs, or the 4 faces of God, the cherubim, angels, right? Like these are the 4 fixed signs. So he's literally saying, like, I'm in between this cross. I'm at the crossroads. I'm in between these constellations, which would be at the north, essentially, is how I perceive it.
Mario, can you see the North Star from? You can't see it from everywhere, right? But
No, you
most
can't see it
places?
from everywhere. When I was looking into it, I don't know about the North Star specifically, but the research I did is that Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Draco, and the North Star can be seen by 90% of the world's population. And so these circumpolar constellations can be seen by the majority of people on the planet. And I don't know how far south that actually goes. But that's why you see it in so many different myths and allegories and whatever, is because people have been seeing it for a really, really long time. And, the North Star, at least in these constellations too, they're considered to be imperishable stars. They don't dip below the horizon line. So night after night after night, I can go outside. I know exactly where the North Star is. That's never going to change. It's always in the same spot. But yeah, I should know actually how far south you need to be in order to not see it.
Yeah, that would be interesting to look into.
I've heard the theory that some of the aspects of holy books, not just the Bible, are actually giving you the ingredients needed to station your city, so that a holy mountain is actually embedded into the skyline at just the right angle, so that your stories
Babylon.
that you read correspond with the way that the heavens will play out on your skyline. So I've heard of that before, that it's actually in the Bible that if you put your city in the right place, that the holy mountain will line up with the stories.
Well, we often think of gates as like being on the outside of the city, but gates were oftentimes in the center of the city, actually. And you look at modern day cities, we actually have what we would call Stargate looking architecture, like modern art pieces in most of our major cities. So I found that interesting. Because gates can also be the center points, and
you got it.
Which also, I know, Mario, you talk a lot about this. So I'll hand it to you.
No, man, that's brilliant. I love that. You're totally spot on. Which is why I think the idea of having a hut or a teepee and having the hole at the top, this is symbolic of this gateway at the north. But who's sharing their screen and what you got here?
Huh? Oh, this is an image of the Tomte in the back. I just like to have up images while people are chatting. But I didn't mean to interrupt. We can go into the Tomte now.
Yeah, go for it, dude.
Oh, okay. So one of the things we talked about the reindeer, we talked about Santa, we talked about the sleigh, talked about the chimney. But what about all those hard-working gnomes and elves? They call them elves, but we really know that they're not elves, right? They're probably more likely to be gnome creature in Scandinavian lore, or they're not trolls. I'm forgetting the creators of the
dwarves.
the dwarves, right? They're most likely gnomes or dwarves, but in Scandinavian lore, the Nisse or the Tomte, they got the red cap and they got the classic iconic beard, but you better give them their porridge on Christmas Eve or there will be hell to pay. It's kind of the theme with that, and that's really where we get leaving food out on Christmas, to pay respect for getting your gifts from these little creators or little guys.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
It makes me think of tempting. We're tempting the tempty.
The Tomte, the tempty Tomties. Nice.
I was thinking of like how like kind of the idea of Santa Claus is kind of related to fairy lore, and how you leave out milk and cookies for Santa Claus is kind of related to fairies also, being that we talked about him being Odin. Odin would be one of the fae and one of the fairies, so it kind of correlates to the fact that you would leave these offerings for him in your house for him to come and visit.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. It reminds me of the whole entire thing. I've heard it from multiple people over the years, but it's also in Alice in Wonderland, where if you find yourself in a place that's like unrecognizable, and maybe you're in the dream state or you're astral projecting or something like that, and you're offered food, don't eat it, because that's how you actually get trapped in that location. It's going to be harder for you to come back. So this food thing actually traps you in that space. And so it kind of reminds me of that. And so I wonder if it's like a gesture. So for Santa, it's almost like just bridging that gap between fantasy and reality. You're offering a gift to Santa. He eats the cookie, he drinks the milk or whatever. It's almost like a gesture saying like, I want you to be here. You're welcome here, sort of thing. And making the whole entire experience more real for everybody.
Also, have you guys heard of... Oh, go ahead.
Well, I just want to point out my most recent justification for the Santa Claus lie. I go back and forth every other year. I'm like, no, I shouldn't have never told my kid about Santa. Oh, no, that's a necessary evil. I go back and forth. But right now I'm justifying it with the fact that the ultimate lesson as an adult, she'll eventually find out that the world does run on blackmail. And that it is a blackmail industry that makes the world go round, that makes the wheels, that greases the wheels in the system. And that's a lesson I don't want to tell her directly. And I'm okay with her learning that slowly at her own pace. And eventually she'll find out that there is a man behind the curtain, so to say. So I just thought I'd throw that in the mix while we're talking about temptations and treats and the blackmail behind Santa.
Is the Wizard of Oz a Christmas movie?
No, but
It's
think
funny,
the Wizard.
There's a lot of overlap, though.
Yeah, the Wizard has a good correspondence, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, because to me, Oz is symbolic of getting closer to this sacred center, and it's acknowledged in the book as such, and lots of alchemical stuff going on. But yeah, I think that you can make a lot of correspondences between the two, for sure.
Roman, carry on with the dwarves.
Okay. Well, Nomad, did you have something to say, brother? You want to get in there?
Not really. I was just gonna say, oftentimes you hear of like these genies or jinn or other entities. They might perform things for you or bring things for you, but they often want something in return. So that was just what came to my mind.
Yeah, love that. I kind of kicking myself now. I really wish I would have dug a bit deeper into some of the Eastern winter solstice practices and seen how some of those stories cross correlate. I really got stuck deep into the North on this one, but next year, maybe in a couple weeks, probably not, because there's always something new, but I'm going to definitely try to pay more homage to some of the Eastern winter solstice tribulations and see what they got going on. But yeah, I guess we could talk about the Tomtes here, the mischievous Tomte spirits of Yule. A Tomte is a Swedish spirit from Nordic folklore who is associated with Yule and later Christmas. Tomte translates to homestead man, and his Norwegian counterpart, the Nisse, comes from the word Nils, which is a form of the name Nicholas, like St. Nicholas. In Scandinavia, though some theories link it to the word Neosi, dear little relative, the Tomte is similar to appearance and statue of the average garden gnome at about 2 feet tall, and is depicted as an elderly man with a long beard, tattered clothing, usually in gray, blue, or red cap. The Tomte was in charge of the farm work, including protecting and raising the animals and clearing forest lands and caring for the growth of livestock. Despite the size, he was attributed to have incredible strength and stamina. Some theories believe that he may be the remnant of an older ancestral reverence practices, particularly with the Nisse named theory, and that he was the ancestral spirit of an older farmer on that land. The connection between ancestral spirit and spirits in the Fae is a very strong connection in Europe. The Tomte had an affinity for horses, and it was believed that the healthiest horse would be one of the Tomte favorite and was looking after, often braiding the horse's mane and tail itself. This cute little horse-loving and hardworking spirit was a great ally to have around the house and farm. As such, the Tomte asked for very little. The only payments that were required of the Tomte were to trust the spirit, have manners around the farm, display teamwork on the farm and those around the house, and respect the Tomte, treat your animals well, and one meal of porridge with butter on the winter solstice or Christmas night, depending on the area. However, the Tomte also had a darker side, as almost all spirits do. If you disrespected or offended the Tomte, if you didn't pull your weight on the farm, or if you mistreated your animals, if you didn't observe traditions, or even worse, if you didn't leave him porridge with butter on Yule, you were sure to upset the Tomte, and then to have to deal with his anger, which ranged from mysterious to even frightful. He would either hide and turn upside down or break items in your house. He would tie all the tails of the livestock together and in some cases kill livestock and household pets with his poisonous bite, or being beaten up by the Tomte himself. If a person was bitten by a Tomte, they couldn't be cured by natural means and would have to seek other outworldly healing. A curse of bad luck would be upon anyone who unbraided the mane and tail of a horse that a Tomte braided. When Christianity came to the Tomte, like most folkloric spirits, it was demonized further. Belief in Tomtes in the 14th century was on par with idolatry and demonolatry. And belief grew that you had to sell your soul or perform heathen rituals to lure a Tomte to your farm. If a farmer was achieving great success while his neighbors weren't, he would be accused of having Tomte, and he would be accused of witchcraft during the Inquisitions. Later on, with the commercialization of Christmas, the Tomte was given a much softer image and was often paired with the Yule goat, to whom they would travel house to house with presents, and maybe one of the origins of the Christmas elf or Santa's helper. However, it might be best to leave out some porridge with butter on top and not the bottom on Yule or Christmas Eve.
Nice, man. So this again, the goat with the chariot comes into the picture, and I feel like we have to always bring up Auriga, Mario. It's like the fact that the goat has been mentioned a couple times with the chariot, and the Yule goat. Auriga is a charioteer constellation that's actually up in Taurus, and it has I think 2 baby goats behind his back, and then one larger goat sometimes on his shoulder. He's carrying 3 goats total, I think. So I just thought I'd have to mention that there is a constellation that is a charioteer and has goats like inside of the constellation, literally. I think the largest goat is called Capia. And I've always wondered, because the shape of the constellation is a pentagram, I've always wondered if when the pentagon got struck, if the wall that got hit on the pentagon could be potentially correspondent to the Capia goat aspect of that constellation.
I love the way you think, dude. Never would have ever come across something like that from anywhere else besides you. So that's very interesting.
Go ahead. No, after you.
No. I was going to share my screen and show a couple images, but if you have any additional thoughts, you should just add to it.
No, I'll just follow you. I got a couple hanging chats for after you. Fire away.
Okay, right on. So getting ready for a thing with Juan, I was looking into all of this stuff. And one of the things that I thought was really fascinating, and hopefully you guys can see my screen with the 3 Santas here.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Yeah, that first off, I just have to say I love I guess I like this kind of artwork or something. I was having a great
Yeah, I do
time
too.
looking at older Christmas images and paintings and stuff. I don't know, there was something about it. It totally warmed my heart. But one of the things I came across was that a lot of earlier Santas were actually shown with a green robe. And then I looked into it, and there's a few articles out there about this transition from green to red. So I can't claim, and I don't really know if it was always green and then it just got flipped to being red, but I could absolutely see that being the case.
I think
Hermes.
that was the whole Coca-Cola situation.
Oh, is that right? Okay, that makes tons of sense. And so green is associated with the heart chakra, but Hermes,
love.
Mercury, Thoth also relate to green, specifically emerald. And so think of the Emerald City, right? And the Wizard of
Emerald
Oz and
tablets.
everything else. The Emerald Tablets, exactly right. And so the other thing on why I chose these 3 images in particular is that they're either carrying a pole or a tree with them. And so again, I'm relating Hermes and this mercurial energy with the pole, with the world tree. The tree is a bridge from earth to the heavens, and symbolically he rides this bridge between realms, essentially. So the fact that they're all carrying with them a pole or a tree, I thought was really fascinating too. And of course they're traveling, so they have gifts for people. So this whole entire mercurial thing, I just really feel like is kind of the heart of a lot of this symbolism. And then also I had this image already prepped for that show, so I might as well just show it. But Hermes leaning against a pillar, the 2 pillars here, but he's leaning against one. And so it just shows you just that connection that he has to the pillar, to the post, to the pole, to the tree. And sometimes
Post office.
Exactly right, dude. That's what I think where postage came from. Exactly, for sure.
Right.
And so also too, Mercury or Hermes, they've been referred to as the Lord of the Crossroads. And I just loved this image here, because here you see Santa looking at where to go. He's looking for directions or whatever. So he's actually at the literal crossroads. He actually has a pole or a staff in his hand, and then he has another tree here. So so that's just what I'm seeing over here. But the main thing I wanted to share is this green robe business in the tree. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's something we need to remember when looking at the roots of Christmas, is that red came from commercialization, and it has not a lot to actually do with the true, even like Saint Nick himself. Like, it's not like that, like even just modern exoteric whatever on the Santa Claus shit, red is like new within the past century at the
so that lower chakra, that materialism idea, where
nice, good point.
The original was the green and the love and the heart. So like Mario said, when he was looking at the pictures, it was warming his heart to see these older styles of the Santa Claus. It's reflecting that energy out.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I think about that all the time around this the holidays. I'm like, there's way more red than I feel comfortable looking at. I literally don't like looking at a lot of red. I can feel it. And so, like you said, when you had those green images up, that looked a lot more appealing and a lot more peaceful. So, great points.
Yeah, and I have to hand it, if Coca-Cola is the one who introduced the red, their marketing is brilliant, obviously. They're wildly successful for a reason. I was just going to say the fact that they associated, the polar bear with Santa so strongly as a marketing campaign, I think is brilliant, because I think the polar bear is a reference to the polar bears in the circumpolar section of the
Ursa
night
Major
sky that
Minor.
revolve around the North Star, Ursa Major and Minor. They're polar bears.
Yeah,
and we don't call any other animal polar animal, right? Polar blank, polar elk, or moose or whatever. I think that's kind of interesting.
So in my Tarot Tories work, I do one version on the United States, and then I have a world map territories equivalent. And funny enough, Iceland is the location. Essentially, it's there with Gemini and Cancer. It's in the it's in the north. It's the keystone at the top. But Iceland, there's a theory out there that Iceland is like the covert secret headquarters of all the breakaway civilization for hundreds of years ago. It's like the hidden throne of Rome is in Iceland. And what is fascinating is if you look at the Icelandic flag, it seems to be encoding the Coca-Cola logo, and the national animal of Iceland is the polar bear. And so its location in my zodiac tarot map reveals correspondence to its own national symbolism. So it's very fascinating.
I just have to mention too, the rune Isa it means ice, and it's literally just a straight vertical line. And I feel like Isa maybe plays the same role as Yod or Yud does in Hebrew, where it's like the simplest letter that you can draw, and so it's kind of like the spark or the beginning of the whole alphabet or whatever.
Yeah,
and so Iceland, I don't know. Also, too, I've been thinking about this lately. Pole land. I think that's kind of fascinating too. So I think
let's take it to an extreme degree. Let's talk about the magical implements of cocaine. A mirror, a line, and a pole. So the ritual of cocaine is also embodied in. Look at the flag of Iceland. It's literally like it's a dividing line. So yeah, let's just throw all these things in the mix together because we do know that cocaine is in Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
Nice.
I would say Isa too is like island, the Island, the Isa land. So the separation from the other lands, the seclusion, solitude, whatever.
It's also a name of Jesus, actually.
Yeah,
in Arabic.
That's right. Exactly. Yes.
Oh. That's beautiful.
Yeah, buddy.
So salvation.
Homie, can you pull up the one any of the last two that I sent your way?
Yep, just give me a second to pop over there, and we'll get that going.
So I believe
I do want to get into mistletoe soon too. So
nice.
Go ahead.
I think Matheson has mentioned that there's a star at the end of Orion's club that's name is basically Esau or Jesus, the equivalent of Jesus. And so if Orion is John the Baptist, he's foretelling the coming of Jesus. And it's quite profound that the Jesus could be at the end of his club that he's wielding. So this is a wild weave. This is something that I discovered quite a while ago. But it does relate to the Christmas thing if you give me a second to tie it all in. This is the United Kingdom, who their flag has the monoceros is the unicorn, the unicorn, and the unicorn is a constellation in the heavens. And right next to the unicorn is the bunny rabbit, is Lepus. Is the Lepus constellation. So if you can zoom in on the dark patch, the sky map I have, you'll actually see that this is anatomically accurate. That the Monoceros, his head is facing that direction. Lepus, the bunny rabbit, his head is facing that direction. These are all in the these are in the winter triangle. We're going back, we're digging through, we're rummaging through Santa's backpack right here. And we're finding the bunny rabbit. We're finding this is the grand rabbit hole in the sky, RH, rabbit hole. We're finding the grand rabbit hole in the sky, the big unicorn that is on all of the heraldry of these royal houses. In smack dab in between the bunny rabbit and the unicorn constellation is the Canis Major. And Canis Major is the dog. It's, the shape. It's actually very anatomically accurate. The constellation looks like a dog. But dogs are known for their love of man. They're man's best friend. So I love man is something that a dog would be thinking of many times over in a day. Can you zoom back out, homie?
Mm-hmm.
Now this is a trip
Whoop.
because the Isle of Man is in the eyeball of, can you guys see the shape of the bunny rabbit in the water?
Mm-hmm.
It even has horns like your standard
Jackalope.
jackalope. And guess what the eyeball of the bunny rabbit is? Guess what the rabbit hole? This is the hole of the rabbit. Guess what it is?
What?
It's the Isle of Man.
Oh.
It's the phrase that a dog repeats over and over in its head all day long. I love man, I love man, I love man, I love man, I love man.
I know that's what my Zuchi boy's constantly thinking, and will never leave me alone.
So this is an old weave from a long time ago, but it's a trip and a half because, homie, when you sent me that video about different Norse traditions around Christmas, the Isle of Man in their tradition kept popping up, and there's a couple different traditions that they do on the Isle there. But it just I thought I would bring it forward because I know I wanted to share this with you, Mario. The fact that there's a sky map and a Earth map that overlap right here between Monoceros and the bunny rabbit.
Yeah, dude. No, I'm here for it. Interesting stuff as always, and it's funny because I never had a real interest in anything related to the Isle of Man at all. But recently, in a book that I was reading about polar symbolism and the way that a lot of older cultures used to structure their community, it was very important for them to have this sacred center, whether it was a world tree or a mound or a standing stone or whatever. And so the Isle of Man, literally, there's a whole chapter in this book that the Isle of Man was the sacred center to the larger British Isles. And so he shows the British Isles, and then he says, Isle of Man, if you look at it, it's right in the middle. And so there were a lot of really important rituals and things that have happened there because of that reason. So it's like it's a cultural sacred center to all of the British Isles.
Right. And,
all the eyes are staring at it.
Right. Right. And what something else that's kind of weird is whatever you name an island, everybody who says the name of the island has to say it by pronouncing "I love" before the name.
Mm-hmm.
So if I
had
made
a friend who had a band, they called their band Isle of View, of View, and it took me, I don't know, at least a year to actually get it. And I was like, oh my God, I get your guys' band name now. It's I Love You.
Yeah. Totally.
Hilarious.
That's great.
So also the Isle of Man in like the King Arthur legends, some would say that it could be Avalon, and that's where he rested.
That makes sense.
Others say that Avalon is other places or a mythical place, but in this kind of depiction here, I would say like maybe that would be Avalon. It's seemingly the center.
Wow.
That makes sense, dude. That's very fascinating.
I want to tag on to that point. I just learned that Carl Jung's wife was studying the Grail mysteries. Just learned that fact this week. I just wanted to throw that in the mix. That's great.
Nice.
There's a lot to do with King Arthur too, and the Ursa Major and Minor, and King Arthur being the North Star in the myths.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I've read that Arthur relates back to the bear, as in Arctic, and things like that. So I can see that making a lot of sense for sure.
Well, he was Polaris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
nice.
I'll send you some stuff about it.
Yeah, please, dude. I'm interested.
Is this images from Isle of Man?
Yeah, I was looking up what type of like stonework was on Isle of Man, or if there was any significant megaliths or ruins. But yeah, they got lots of churches there, and
yes, it has a very fascinating history and a lot of strange. It's an exception in so many ways. They have these goats that have as many as 4 to 6 horns. They have multiple horned goats They're called the Manx goats, and they also have a Manx cat that is a special kind of cat, special breed of like mountain cat with no tail. And their coccyx tailbone has this weird development on it that's unique to the island. And they're actually high maintenance to keep these animals alive. So there's a lot of energy going into like the breeding process. And there's a lot of mystery behind the legacies behind keeping these animals around. There is a whole lot going on the Isle of Man. It's also a famous bicycle race and I believe motorcycle race as well.
Nice.
What is this Isle of Dogs?
Oh, right. Oh, okay. Yes. So, oh my gosh, I don't want to derail everything too much, but
what is
Douglas,
Isle of Dogs?
Douglas,
now
yes,
we got
Douglas, yes, Douglas is. So the name of the capital is Douglas, which is a hail to Diana. She is the Douglass. She is the huntress. She's the lady who is always accompanied by dogs. So there again, we have this hailing to the dogs.
Nice, nice. If I'm not mistaken, there are on the Isle of Man, there's debate on what the center of the Isle of Man is. And when you start looking into this history, according to this book, a lot of these older names for these towns actually translate to center, as in like the center of the island, as in the center of the British Isles and everything else. So I'll have to dig up some of those examples for you, Gabe, if you're interested at some point.
Yeah.
It's very fascinating.
That is fascinating because it's like they're fighting over who Artemis is aiming at. They're like, shoot me, I want to be the target.
Oh, dude, yeah, this guy was getting into it, and he was saying that there's been like debates going on for like many years of people claiming like, no, our town is the center, no, this town is the center, you know. So yeah, so they're vying for that position.
That's so cute. They want to be shot by Artemis. That's adorable.
Yeah, my hometown, they always said they were the center of the state.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. A lot of there's places that claim center of the state, center of the country, or whatever, and that's kind of their claim to fame, right?
They're all self-centered. The world is run by Nietzscheans. Homie, if you can.
If we could...
Go ahead. Go ahead.
What you got, Dan? What you got?
What you guys want from me?
Well, I was going to change subject, so if you want to stay on this one and add to it, go for it.
Well, I've got one last little piece in that next image I said to you, homie. This is the ritual on the Isle of Man. It's also a Welsh ritual. It's traditional to the Welsh culture, but it is also maintained on the island of Man. Let's see. Oh, that's a interesting one. That's a graphic of the charioteer. Correspondent with the Grinch that Stole Christmas. Oh, here we have NASA. Check out this. NASA, you just flip around the syllables, you get Santa. You know, these guys, they got to still play freaking fantasizing
that should be a
about
shirt right there, Santa.
Yeah, it's all fantasy fiction.
That would
from
sell
our
like
childhood.
a motherfucker. Damn it, we'll get on that for next year.
For sure.
It's hilarious.
So it's the one with the it's got the picture of the kind of the ghost horse. This is this weird ritual that they do. It's called Madi Lloyd.
That's all I got, bruv.
Oh, maybe I have to send it again. My bad. I'll send you one more. So it's called Madi Lloyd, and it's where they parade this horse head, or I think it's actually a skull of a bull that they parade around the town, and they dress it up as a woman or a bride, and they go door to door, and they have these little it's almost like rap battle debates with this bull's head that is dressed up as horse, a horse's ghost.
It's a horse, right?
It is. It's a horse, but it often is. They use a bull skull. Did it come through, homie?
Yeah.
Let's check. Oh, here we go.
Yeah.
I saw that. I saw that in the Christmas video that Roman posted on the Telegram chat, which is a very good video. It talks about all the different northern areas and their traditions. And I thought that was an interesting one too. The horse on a stick that would go to a door and battle the person that was inside, and if the person on the outside with the horse won, then they would get to go inside the person's house and eat their food and whatnot that they were cooking for Christmas dinner. And if they lost, then they would be rejected and they'd have to leave.
I wonder how the Tomtes would feel
else.
about that.
That's exactly
they're probably
right.
stealing their porridge.
That was a really fun documentary, by the way, homie. Like, I highly recommend it to anybody. It came at it from a very unique angle, you know.
Yes, yeah. Which one? I sent a few out. Are you talking about the Christmas before Christ
the one
video?
with Father Frost?
Yes.
It's talking
yeah,
about like the
fantastic
Poland and Norwegian areas of Christmas.
I'll share them all
Beginnings.
on I'll share it all
Russia.
on the Telegram so everyone can tune in.
So this one I definitely had to share for many reasons. You know, Mario, it made me think of you because the horse is carried around on a pole, right? It's like it's kind of like your standard. It's like a pole ceremony. And this is a trip though. The way that they pronounce Madi Lloyd, this word, the way it's pronounced in its native tongue, sounds so much like the word body fluid. It sounds so much like body fluids. When you hear them say the name of it, you're like, what? That sounds like, which makes it kind of have a Halloween creepiness to it, you know, the door-to-door ghostiness. But I just had to bring these images together because the Madi Lloyd character is draped in sackcloth and carried around on a pole. Well, the word sackcloth stands alone. It's so similar to Santa Claus. It freaks me out a little how sackcloth and Santa Claus are correspondent. But also the fact,
creepy.
yeah, and also the fact that anatomically that skull looks a lot like the dragon that is the national flag for the Welsh flag. You know, you can kind of see what I'm getting at there. The weird nose of the dragon. It's very unique, very stylistic. So then I also put this picture of all these craters of the moon because a lot of the craters are called mare, M-A-R-E, Mare, Crisium, Mare Triangulis, Mare Nectaris. They're all mare constellations on the moon. So I thought I would just kind of throw all these symbols together in one gestalt.
Awesome. You know why I think they're called mare? I believe what they're indicating is actually that these are considered to be dried up oceans.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. Yeah.
Right.
And why does mare correlate to ocean?
Maritime, mariners.
Oh,
Yeah.
word. Okay, there we
Mary.
go.
Right.
Oh, the waters. Yes. Okay, word.
Yes, and a ghosty haunting horse is like a nightmare, floating in and out of the the substance of your dreams.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Very
And
cool, man.
mare's-
I had no idea about any of this.
Is mare another name for horse, right? If I'm not mistaken.
You got it, yeah, buddy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Just making.
Morgan says that Rhiannon from the Mabagoni is associated with horses. She's a strong-minded otherworld woman who chose Pwyl, Prince of Dyfed, as her consort in preference to another man whom she has already been betrothed. She is intelligent, politically strategic, beautiful, and famed for her wealth and generosity. With Pwyl, she has a son, the hero Pryderi, who later inherits the lordship of Dyfed. She endures tragedy when her newborn child is abducted, and she is accused of infanticide. As a widow, she marries Manawydan of the British royal family and has further adventures involving enchantments. Like some other figures of British Welsh literary tradition, Rhiannon may be a reflection of an earlier Celtic deity. Her name appears to derive from the reconstructed Brittonic form Rigatona, which derives from queen. In the first branch of the Mabinogi, Rhiannon is strongly associated with horses, and so is her son Pierderi. She is often considered to be related to the Gaulish horse goddess Epona. She and her son are often depicted as mare and foal. Like Epona, she sometimes sits on her horse in calm, stoic way. This connection with Epona is generally accepted among scholars of the Mabinogi and Celtic studies, and Ronald Hutton, a historian of paganism, is skeptical. But interesting. There's also another part that says Rhiannon appears to him and his court as a promised marvel. She is a beautiful woman arrayed in gold silk brocade, riding a shining white horse. Pwyll sends his best horseman after her 2 days running, but she always remains ahead of them. Through her horse
Mhm.
never does more than amble. On her third day, she finally follows himself and does no better until he finally appeals to her to stop for him. So, like the idea of the horse coming to the door, it's almost like it could be like a battle of words to find her lost, abducted child.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm thinking about Pegasus more and more now because we're in the winter season, and Pegasus bridges from like Aquarius all the way through to the spring, and it's a very large constellation, and it has a woman, Andromeda, attached to it, so that makes it even longer. But it's a white horse. We're going into the white snowy season. It's like everybody's uh, almost like racing to the finish line of the spring equinox.
Yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of Death coming on the white horse, just like the Death card, right? And then Death very much being associated with Saturn and Capricorn and things of that sort. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's all very fascinating stuff. But I actually have to get going. But this was awesome. So I have some solstice plans this evening.
Nice.
But yeah, you guys gave me a few things to follow up with. And Dan, I wanna learn more about Arthur being the pole star. That's very, very intriguing to
All
me.
right. Yeah,
All right,
man.
guys. Check you later.
Thanks,
Cheers,
All right,
brother.
everyone.
Mario.
Thanks for
Peace.
coming on,
Yep.
man.
Peace
Bye.
out.
Much love, brother. Moose Cavalry.
The Moose
I want to get into
Cavalry.
the history of the mistletoe a little bit before
Yeah.
we finish up here.
Yes.
Uh,
Put it on top of me,
The
please.
mistletoe.
have
Give
you
me the
ever
kiss.
received a kiss under a sprig of mistletoe? A sprig of mistletoe during the holiday season? If not, then you have undoubtedly seen the tradition played out in the movies or on TV. The plant has even made its way into a number of classic holiday songs. Decorating with mistletoe may not be as well known as a holiday tradition as singing carols or stringing lights up around the Christmas tree, but it's near the top of the pantheon of holiday traditions. However, despite its popularity, the history of the plant and how it became incorporated into holiday lore remains mostly unknown. What is mistletoe? Let's start from the beginning. The mistletoe tradition holds that a man is allowed to kiss any woman standing beneath a sprig or bouquet of mistletoe, and vice versa. If a kiss is refused, bad luck befalls the person who said no. Now we'll dive a little deeper into the lesser known facts. Mistletoe is a parasitic plant that produces small white berries and grows almost exclusively in trees. It finds its home, like many seeds do, through bird droppings. As the seed begins to grow, the plant attaches itself to the host tree in order to steal water and the essential nutrients that it needs to survive. Not only is the mistletoe a parasitic plant that comes from the bird droppings, but the origin of the name itself are fairly unattractive as well. It's derived from the two Anglo Saxon words missel, mistel, meaning dung, and tan, meaning stick or branch. So, where does the tradition of kissing others underneath the branches of a small parasitic plant come from? The history of the mistletoe. The puzzle begins in the first century AD with ancient civilizations. The consensus among experts is that the use of mistletoe in ritual form started with the Celtic Druids. This ancient civilization of people lived on the British Isles in what is now Ireland and Scotland. the mistletoe became a sacred symbol of vivacity and fertility to the Druids after they saw it blooming in the trees during the harsh winters. It would later become a central focus of the ritual of oak and mistletoe, which I'm also going to read what the ritual of oak and mistletoe are. A ceremony that led the Romans to call the Druids barbarians. Another piece of the mistletoe puzzle comes from Norse mythology. In the Norse culture, the mistletoe plant was a sign of love and peace. The story goes that the goddess Frigg lost her son, the god Balder, to an arrow made of mistletoe. After his death, she vowed that mistletoe would kiss anyone who passed beneath, so long it was never again used as a weapon. The last piece of the puzzle leads us to the tradition that we know and love today. The kissing tradition, as we know, it appears to have started in 18th century England, where it first became widely used as a Christmas decoration. The tradition spread quickly throughout the world, beginning as a custom among the lower classes, made its way to all classes, becoming a universal holiday ritual. So, as it also says, so next time you find yourself puckering up under the mistletoe, remember that it all started with bird droppings, a parasite, barbarians, and a Norse goddess. Cheers.
Nice.
Cheers.
So I found an anagram in the word mistletoe.
Oh.
Isis, Tomte.
Oh.
You could take Isis out and you got Tomte left.
I love that. I love the Tomtes, those little spirits, and then they like the horses. I like the thought of there being like little forest sprites or spirits on your property. When I was growing up, I grew up in the woods of our town. It took about 45 minutes to drive to town, or like an hour and a half on the school bus. And the house we moved into was an old farmhouse. And I would see these like spirits, these white ghost spirit things that would be out in the field doing work. And I would tell my mom, I'm like, oh my God, I'm seeing these ghosts, I was like, oh, I don't, maybe. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm seeing them. But what some of the lore about the Tomtes is that they will actually be the old farmers of the land. So like their bodies get re-emanated into that smaller entity in that Tomte body. And I just like that thought. I like the thought that the farmers are still looking after their farm and their land. And it's like this continuous cycle of like, we're loving this land. We're keeping it going. We're showing homage to the nature. And, so maybe if you do good enough, you can come back as a Tomte and have awesome supernatural powers, right? That'd be awesome.
Totally. One thing kind of to tie the Tomte and the mistletoe, one thing I love is how a kiss is a commitment. It's an agreement. It's an accord, ideally. But it's also a covenant of sorts. And so the fact that the mistletoe is above you when you come together to make this agreement to share intimacy, it's really something fascinating. It's kind of symbolic of what the church or whatever your spiritual body that you have in common. You could think of it as like the parents who arranged the marriage. You could think of it as your guardian angels, whether they're going to get along in the long run or not. There's a lot of things about two people coming together in an agreement and having something held over their head, literally and legally.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
it's also passing love to one another through a kiss.
Right. It's almost like it invites mischief. The fact that somebody's got something to lose if it goes wrong.
Yeah.
Well, and then the whole point was it was like a evergreen, right? It was even through the storm, through the winter, it was still green. So I think that probably plays into it as well, that everlasting nature of our connections.
That everlasting. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. I have this other article from Ritual, Ancient and Modern by Penny Billington. And this goes into the Druidic oak and mistletoe ceremony. And it says the mistletoe is found but rarely upon the oak, and when found, is gathered with due religious ceremony. It is, if possible, on the 6th day of the moon, for it is by the moon that they measure their months and years, and also ages of 30 years. They call the mistletoe by a name meaning the all healing. Having made preparation for sacrifice and banquet beneath the trees, they bring their 2 white bulls, whose horns are bound. Then, for the first time, clad in a white robe, the priest ascends the tree and cuts the mistletoe with a golden sickle, and it is received by others in a white cloak. Then they kill the victims, praying that God will render this gift of his propitious to those to whom he has granted it. They believe that the mistletoe, taken in drink, imparts fecundity to barren animals, and that it is an antidote for all poisons. Such are the religious feelings that are entertained toward trifling things by many peoples. That's from Pliny Historia Naturalis, the 16th. Um, a bloke who says he knows told me that there are only about 12 oaks bearing mistletoe in Britain, and recently there's been a fresh lead from the Druids who've probably found a new one. It's nice to know that they're around, but that's not much help in obtaining some. So, as it's unlikely that we'll have a sprig of oak mistletoe this season, let's pay homage to one of the very few ancient Druid rituals that we know about by examining the valuable quotation above. Gathered on the 6th day of the moon. Why the sixth? Pliny gives a reason. They choose this day because the moon, though not yet in the middle of her course, has already considerable influence. Not a good reason for being so very specific. Why not the 5th or the 7th? Did the Druids have a system of symbolic number unknown to old Pliny, perhaps one shared by Pythagoras? In numerology terms, the number 6 is equated with success, harmony, balance, equilibrium, and rewards. Think of the tarot card of the king riding victoriously at the head of his troops, set between the tricksy initiatory 5 and the magical contentious 7, 6. Like 4, has a pleasing solidarity and groundedness. It anchors us into the real world. What better day to start your spells? As the Romans observed, the Brits counted their calendar dates by nights. Our direct link back to this being our everyday use of the word fortnight. And don't forget the wonderful sennight, a 7 night a week. It may be archaic, but it's still in the dictionaries. So the date was calculated by the night and by the stage of the moon, with its ripening sickle racing to the first quarter, but the right was held in the day in the eye of the sun. They bring their 2 white bulls whose horns are bound. Then, for the first time, this incorporates 3 important symbolic points. 1. White is traditionally the color of the other world as expressed by the suffix wen, W-E-N, or win, W-Y-N, as in headwind, Pridwin, Gwyn, and Apnud. It's a good party game to list as many as you can. Win or when means holy and fair. The hounds of Anwin are white with red extremities, the red presumably signifying life and the fact that they can hunt between the worlds. And the white stag and other white totemic animals are usually an indicator of an otherworldly adventure. So the color of the bulls say that they are set apart, sacred to more than just being themselves in the animal kingdom, and possibly capable of acting as links between the world of form and the other worlds. 2. Bulls are solar creatures. With their strength, vigor, potency, and endurance, they share the properties of the ever giving sun as masculine god forms. We can only conjecture just what monetary worth the Celts put on this marvelous creature, but there are mythological tales about the wars fought in Ireland over their possession. So the sacrifice tells us of the huge importance of the right and the wealth of that time. People were able to commit to it. The fact that the bulls are being sacrificed so near to the solstice could indicate a range of possibilities, that they are messengers to the sun, which is visibly growing weaker and withdrawing from the earth, at this time, that their blood feeds the land, that the solar lord must retreat into darkness of death in order to be reborn, and that the lunar white and green mistletoe descends from its magical place in the sky, now to be brought fully into this world and bring its gifts as a result of this exchange. I want to say too, like the green Santa Claus with the white trim, or red, the white and green as a symbol of the mistletoe. So interesting, and because we just talked about how the mistletoe is a symbol of love because it killed Balder, so it should never be used as a weapon. So now it's used for love. So that I wonder if that has any correlations. But the third is the bulls have their horns bound for the first time. What does this mean? Does it indicate the youth of the bulls, representing the sun energy as that of a warrior? In his full strength and vigor, young bulls were also presumably of more worth, with working lives and potential as studs before them. So choosing them must have been a way of adding extra honor to this very rare and unusual ceremony. The priest ascends the tree. Well, he must ascend to get to the mistletoe, but I've always imagined the ceremony with the priest climbing onto the bull's back to get the plant. If this was so, and it's pure conjecture, it equates to magical practice as we know it from sources such as the Mabagonian. Think of Lao, Giffis, half hero, half solar lord. He has a mysterious birth, sustained not by his mother, but by his uncle, father, and he is a sacrifice, performed by a lord of winter, of the hunt, with the convenience of the plant kingdom, in the person of this flower bride, as with all rituals, life events from this source, Lu can only be killed in a very prescribed way. The seemingly undignified manner of his death, including goats, balancing, and ceremonial bathing, speak of the liminal space needed for a hero's death to be acknowledged on both sides of the veil. He is neither clothed nor naked, wet nor dry, on earth or in the air for this very special ritual. Can we find an echo of this priest's position? Not on earth, not in the sky, not riding, i.e., not on a horse, standing on the back of a solar symbol in order to cull the lunar fruit of the other world. It remains a potent image for me. Cuts the mistletoe with a golden sickle. Can one get a cutting edge on gold, renowned for its softness? Some say yes. One druid says that he's done it, but I have no evidence. The image in my mind is of the incredibly tough stem of the mistletoe, straight and green, thin and strong as the bones of a bird. I can imagine cutting some from soft herbal matter with golden blade, but not the mistletoe. Balancing up a tree with acolytes with a white cloth, all ready to receive the offering as it falls. I'd rather not try it. Obviously, gold is important as another solar symbol and must be present. But if I ever aspire to such dizzy heights as to be the hub of such a ritual, my sickle will be gold, handled possibly with a flint blade. Having made a preparation for sacrifice and a banquet beneath the trees, well, sacrifice is interpreted differently in our spiritual practice. With every ritual, every statement of intent, we lay our integrity on the line and try to act with honesty. This ritual is to gather a magical herb called All Heal. So if we follow the example and use the mistletoe magically for health in whatever aspect, the individual has to decide the trade off involved, if any. The banquet is essential. The intensity of high ritual must be followed by a reaction, losing the stays and whooping it up a bit to bring yourself back down to earth. A OBOD, midwinter gathering, regulars know what a ceremony at Chalice Well will lead inexorably to hijinks on the dance floor in the town hall by 10 p.m. Then kill the victims, praying that God will render his this gift of his propitious to those propitious. I don't know. Okay, it appears that we gently disengage at this point, praying and killing. Food for thought here. Modern Druidry is less about worship, more about relationship, our personal relationship with the divine, and therefore any meaningful sacrifice could not involve any third party. Most sacrifices I expect will be of our time and energy. Offerings, on the other hand, especially in the form of thanks and gratitude, are omitted from any ritual at our peril. The punishment is not from the gods, who will gently exit our sphere, but from ourselves, self condemned to pursue a joyless, ungrateful way in this world of wonders. Gratitude is possibly the most magical impulse in the universe. Yeah.
I think
Hell
that's a
yeah.
great way to wrap that story up with the gratitude thing and how we were talking about Thanksgiving
Yeah.
being before Christmas. That's awesome.
Yeah. There's a lot there that kind of incorporated everything that we were talking about. I wasn't really expecting that to happen. I was going to read this earlier. So it's good that fate worked its way in, or destiny, I guess you could
Divine
say.
timing,
And
I like to call it.
divine timing, yeah. And it kind of incorporated all that thing just through the mistletoe.
Mhm. Yeah, a couple notes on the mistletoe. You know, I've recently learned that the green, red, and the white are a indication of the Mithraic caste system, and many national flags rock the red, green, and the white, and that it indicates that Mithraic influence, which is probably Moorish or Islamic. You know, it has like a flavor of that Mithraic Islamic Roman influence.
You get that Baskin Robbins.
Yeah.
Can I get that Mithraic ice cream?
Red, white, and green.
Have you guys ever heard that mistletoe is one shape? Its leaf is one shape until if something tries to eat it, if it gets attacked, then it changes its leaf shape to be spiky. And
Oh,
I think I have heard of that. I don't remember the details though. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it has the ability to activate something in its DNA that will make it take on that more spiky, foreboding look. So it's almost like a virginity model, symbolically, you know, that it's like we all have it within ourselves to be triggered and become something more barbed.
You know, it's interesting too, like the idea of asking plants and whatnot for their permission to be taken. If you go and try to take the mistletoe, it's gonna act in that manner and prick you. Whereas if you asked permission to take it, maybe it would allow itself.
Yeah,
if your
buddy.
intentions are right.
Nice. I love that. I love it. Give thanks.
And yet the plants too.
Yes.
Bringing it back to good alchemical stuff. Plants and their knowledge of how they grow, when they grow, why they grow. They know exactly what they need to be mixed with in order to interact with the bodies. I feel like that knowledge of that they are medicine, that they hold qualities that we need. I think plants know that inherently. Like that's kind of like that, you know, that because we're living with the plant
like the
kingdom,
dog.
right? We're not. Yeah, you know, hey, yeah, like the
the
dog.
I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
And it's that perfect
like plants are like, I'm going to heal you. I'm going to heal you.
But you know, they also, in the same time, the dog wants to love you, but you also need to do things in order to maintain that dog's life, just like we have to do things in order to maintain the plant life, and living in a symbiotic relationship between the two worlds. And I feel like, you know, we can get a lot of really great insight and answers from the plant kingdom if we can learn to work with it, to talk to it. And like even walking on grass, sometimes I feel like a dick just walking on grass, you know, like try to.
Is there a king of all plants?
Super interesting question. Yeah.
The oak tree, the druids.
Yeah. Yep.
Oak tree comes to mind. Yeah, oak.
The green man, you know, that mystical green man, it's that is cross correlated through all the theologies, right? You know, the green man is emanate of nature. But But I think we all are, and that's my biggest problem with today's society and the world that we live in. And and I don't blame anybody for not just being, dirty from their head to their feet like I am half the fucking time just because I'm a weirdo. But it's because of the societal conditioning that we have to be stripped away from nature. But that's one of our biggest goals, and one of my biggest goals in life is just to try to, if you can influence one person to take their shoes off and go stick them in the soil, then that's a good day's work right there.
So true. Speaking of the Green Man, did you guys ever go into the Yule Elf at all?
No, not the Yule Elf. No, we went into the Tomtes and the Nisa.
We got the Scandinavian legend. Traditionally, one would leave out food like porridge with butter for the little red-capped Tomte or niece, household spirit or house, and that would thus have the tradition of leaving food out for Father Christmas, who in Sweden is called the Yule Tomte, spelled Jul. So I guess they gather to put together for Father Christmas.
Oh,
yeah. One thing that I
goes
think
into
is
like me talking about fairies and Santa being one of the fairy spirits, or the king of the fairies in that way.
Yeah, I love that.
I think that something that like a major theme that kind of comes up with all of what we've woven here is like it needs to be based in some kind of mystery that is rooted in truth. Like finding out that these constellations are a real thing, that's a real gem for everybody eventually to come down and realize. But they need to have the appearance or the veneer of irrationality or superstition, because in the fact of the matter is we're just lacking the cultural context to come along years later, at this point in our life and be like, that's why it's sacred. Oh, you can make this out of mistletoe, that it has all these layers of truth that we're kind of bringing to bear here to share. It's kind of beautiful, and it makes me think of how we lift up something that is sacred. We hold it above ourselves. Like I heard somebody recently talking about using a light, like a little candle, to light the room. When the storm goes out, and they learned that the best way to use a single candle is actually to hold it above yourself. And by putting yourself below the candle, you get optimal use, because then you're kind of in the shade and you can actually see better around the room. Whereas if it's in your field of vision, it makes it hard to see far in the room. And so that's maybe what I'm thinking about here, is that when we exalt something and hold it up sacred above ourselves, it gives us a beautiful perspective.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like that North Star and the pole symbolism. It's what it's telling us ergonomically.
That's what I get from the shape of a triangle, right? Like we all get closer to each other as we get closer to God, or that North Star, or whatever you want to call it. But as we're getting closer to each other. So yeah, great point. I have to run, but this has been awesome. I love you all. Thank you so much. I hope we can do it again soon sometime.
Cheers, man. Love you too, man.
Peace.
Peace, brother.
I wanted to share. Let me see. Because we were talking about Father Christmas and Santa Claus and all that, but can't forget the mamas. And so there's this. Trying to say this one. This is Madranit. It's known as Night of the Mothers, or Mother's Night. And it was an event held at what is now Christmas Eve by the Anglo-Saxon pagans. The event is attested by the medieval English historian Bede in his 8th century Latin work De Temporum Ratione. It has been suggested that sacrifices may have occurred during this event. Scholars have proposed connections between Anglo-Saxon Madranit and events attested among other Germanic peoples, specifically those involving the Disir, collective female ancestral beings, and Yule. And the Germanic matris or matrone females being attested by way of altar and votive inscriptions, nearly always appearing in trios or in threes.
Like the three fates.
Yes, exactly, which ties right back to the ancient Celtic goodness, which is the mamas, and Mother Nature and all of that goodness. Scholars have linked these madra or mothers with the Germanic matries and matronae. Rudolf Simek says that madronite as a Germanic sacrificial festival should be associated with the matron cult of the West Germanic peoples. On the one hand, to Disablot and the Disting, already known for the medieval Scandinavia, on the other hand, and is chronologically to be seen the connecting link between these Germanic forms of cult. So I found that through wondering about I've heard that like at a time we switched from sacrificing blood to using like sweets. Instead of there being like a bowl of blood or something out there for a sacrifice, we went to sweets to kind of clean it up and make Christmas a little bit more fun. And there we go.
Can I riff on sacrifice a little bit?
I want to go on some of that too. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, because I think like this whole idea of sacrifice gets taken out of context to mean like the killing of a human or an animal, and really what I think the real meaning is you're taking it from its environment, like we just talked about the mistletoe and taking it off the oak tree. You're taking it now from its animal kingdom into the human kingdom to use it as some type of adornment or ceremonial prize. And I think the same with other types of sacrifices is that you're taking it from its natural environment and taking it into the human world, because we've been talking about the celestial bodies and the plant kingdom as almost as like as above so below type of aspect. And it's playing out in the human life form in the ceremony. But what I really think is talking about is the sacrifice that's being made is like sacrificing, this part of you to gain something else. It's did we lose Roman? Uh-oh.
There he is.
He's the one recording. All
That's
right,
okay.
he's
The
back.
law of equal exchange will bring him back.
Yeah, so
Nah, I hit a
exactly.
button.
I think it's more of like the exchange more than this sacrifice thing. I think
Well, that's what
oftentimes
it
in
that's
the
what it
human
truly
sacrifices
means.
too, in the
Yeah.
human sacrifices, it was often by like voluntarily. They wanted to sacrifice themselves for the greater good of the population, just
Right.
like a soldier goes off to war for his country. He knows that he could be sacrificing his own life to do so, but it's for the greater good. And I think it's the same thing in some of these sacrificial type of
It is.
motifs that we have, and not necessarily like they're just going around slaughtering everybody like they do in war.
Yeah,
War and sacrifice are two totally different things. It's a sacrifice for spiritual gain or for sustenance, not for just material possession.
No doubt. I mean, ignorance is the only thing that would stop somebody from thinking that, because sacrifice is supposed to be a volunteer. It's never going to be a true sacrifice. For a good god or a good entity. Maybe murder on one hand would be a sacrifice of like a darker, shadowy entity, but absolutely. I mean, I would be honored to, like you said, bringing a plant into the human life. If you're doing a human sacrifice, it might be that you are going to go join the gods now. You are going to be a part of that community. So it's a beautiful transfer. And, these times and cultures, I think that's exactly what that meant. There were people that would be honored to sacrifice themselves because they know that there's so much more than just this current moment in time. The vast depth of life it just continuously goes on. Heck, maybe you'll come back. Heck, you'll be a Tomte, bud.
right?
And the idea of sacrificing a virgin too is the fact that you're giving something pure to the gods, and not something tarnished.
That's so
Yeah.
true. I'll just talk about sacrifice. It reminds me of the old Christmas tale of the couple with the watch and the brush. You guys heard about this?
Nice. Yeah,
No.
the gifts of the Magi.
Yeah, the gifts of the Magi. The wife is trying to get her husband a chain for his watch that he loves so much, and loves him so much and wants to show her love for the Christmas celebration. And he equally loves her so much, wants to get her a brush for her beautiful hair that she's kept so beautiful throughout the years, and is willing to sell his watch to get this brush. And she has to sell her hair to get the chain for the
Oh,
watch. And so they end up giving each other gifts that are completely useless. But it shows how much that they love each other, and it was worth the sacrifice. Just
Right.
because she has no hair to brush with her brush, he has no watch to use with his chain.
Yeah.
It shows them how much they were willing to give up just to
yeah.
love each other.
You know,
That's beautiful, man. And I think people do that during this time. Families go broke during this time of the year to try to please their kids. You
mhm,
know, like they're bending over backwards just to try to say, like, because sometimes the only way that we know how to show affection in this modern time is by spending our money on things. It's like, look, here you go. And so yeah, it's beautiful, man. And humans are full of love, and that's why we do what we do, man. It's all for love.
Yeah. But there's also the feast aspect of Christmas, which has to do with the different kind of sacrifices. And we have the eating of the Yule boar in honor of Freya, going back to the goddesses. And the god associated, she is the goddess associated with the harvest of fertility, who in Christian times became associated with Saint Stephen and his feast day, 26th of December. More variations can be found in the Gula Thingslag 7, where Yule was celebrated for a fertile and peaceful season. We also see the saga of Hakon the Good, that Odin was hailed at this time as the bringer of victory, while Njord and Freyr were hailed for peace and fertility. So the honorary feast of the Yule boar is in honor of Freya.
And also, like we were talking too about the year and Christmas being the end, kind of the end, the solstice, and giving thanks. All of that is a cycle of sacrifice within itself. And so what you're giving up for the year, and even like the seasons, is pertains to that sacrifice. The story of Jesus in the astrotheological perspective of the sun sacrificing itself for 3 days to become renewed and come back brighter is also like a sacrifice for the humans from the gods.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's okay. Okay. I'm thinking of smoke. Like when you burn something, that's how you get to, like, because through different elemental aspects, you get to sacrifice something into that element, and it gets absorbed.
Mhm.
And there's elemental spirits that might receive that sacrifice. But when you burn something, you're automatically connecting to the ether and the air, and
You're sending it up. Yeah.
yeah, and it's like a transporter for intention. Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, the smoke and incense and vapors and smells, very 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 old. Like I just always like to remind people to just you know to burn things, man, because it's really, first of all, it's enticing just to watch smoke as it coils up, and then you get to see the shape of the air, because air is definitely one of the most mysterious elements that we have. You have the land, right? You have earth, which is very very much so here. It's physical, it's there. You have water. Well, that's mystical, it's beautiful, it's light, it's heavy, it's strong, it's flowy, it gets in, it gets on top, like it's everything, right? Then you have fire. Oh, that's tantalizing, it burns. But you have the air, and the air is incredibly mysterious because you can't really see it. You can breathe it, you can feel it, and that's where all the electricity and all of the information gets traveled through And it's kind of this like invisible master of the elements that is kind of holding everything down. Because at what point, does the air not become the ether, right? There's the fifth element of ether, but it's almost like ether is the element of air because they're interchangeable. And it shows that transmutability between all of them. And so that's why I like smoke and I like to watch, because it's a way that you can actually almost see a little bit more of the air and a little bit more of the ether and what's happening there, because like that's where the dimensions lie, and it's super super interesting. But when you spark it with your mind and your consciousness, you can tap into the air.
Magic stuff.
Yes,
I okay, well, we're 2.5 hours in. Okay, one thing I wanted to bring up, and I've talked about this on a couple other podcasts, but it's a crazy weave. Tycho Brahe, right? The guy with the
Yes.
golden nose.
I'm so glad you went there. I almost forgot.
No, we cannot forget. Of course not. Here, let me try to find a good tab we could share.
He had a golden nose.
Yeah, so Tycho Brahe is this famous astronomer, and he was Swedish, and Danish. Believe he got an entire island in Denmark that he built an observatory on, and it was huge, massive structure. And here, let's go to Tycho's observatory. And it's very, very iconic. He was a geoheliocentrist. So at this time when it was like absolutely normal to have opposing worldviews, like we have flat Earth and globe Earth now, and like that's like kind of like these two things. But back in the day, there's been massive influx of different viewpoints, and it was okay. So yeah, it was called Uraniborg was the name of his observatory that he built. Yeah, Tycho Brahe.
Look at that mustache.
I hate websites like this. I know, right? Look at that chain.
I am a walrus. Cuckoo, cuckoo.
Look at that mustache, man.
Oh, come on. Where is a picture of the observatory? So his sister, Sophia Brahe, was actually a real genius as well. She would build all these instruments. She was the horticulture on the property, but they would also build these lavish, huge things. So Tycho Brahe was known to be a very eccentric character. And one day, while in a dispute with a classmate, they got into a duel with swords over a math equation or some sort of astronomical equation. And as they were dueling, Tycho Brahe got the tip of his nose cut off. And so he's like, oh, this is going to be a problem for me. So he had a prosthetic nose made. And so he had a gold nose made. He had all these other different types of precious metal noses made. Well, later in life, Tycho Brahe gets brought to Prague to be within the what they would be claimed as the magical circle of Rudolf II, who was the famous emperor of the Holy Roman Empire and of not Byzantine. What's the word I'm looking for?
Ottoman?
Not the Ottoman Empire. No.
Assyrian?
Persian?
No. Rudolf. Oh my goodness. Anyways, so he had John Dee, he had Edward Kelly, he had Tycho Brahe, Johannes Kepler.
Yeah, Rudolf was
Bohemia,
more
the
French,
king of Bohemia, the original king of Bohemia is Rudolf II. And he was known to be, he was literally the king of Bohemia. So he brought in all of these magical people, and he was like, okay, I know Edward Kelly can make the Philosopher's Stone. I know John Dee's a crazy sorcerer. Tycho Brahe is this famous astronomer who got gifted an entire island to build his observatory on. So he brought all these people into Prague. And this is when, things like the Prague astronomical clock were actually being built. Like this was that time. And so you have Rudolf, who has a golden nose, or no, sorry, you have Tycho, who has a golden nose, who's an astronomer who lives in the
Yeah.
north. He got brought in from the north to go work for Rudolf II. And then later, one of the famous stories, not like besides the midget, the magical clairvoyant midget that worked with Tycho on Uraniborg, was this familiar or this animal, this elk, this pet elk that Tycho would drink with occasionally and bring him into the bar. And everybody would they would love it because Tycho would literally bring his elk, his pet elk, into the bar.
This is so crazy.
It's crazy.
So Rudolph was extremely eccentric. He was well known for being extremely eccentric. So for him to be like the bottleneck of all these personalities coming together turns this story into like the cantina from Star Wars kind of scene where you have like all of the greatest coming together in this one time frame and rubbing elbows with one another. So when Homie was telling me about this, I couldn't help but think about Olaf from Frozen. Oh, nice. Who is that? Is that John D. and Ed Kelly?
That's Rudolph. That's Rudolph II, the King of Bohemia. There. Then they got their monkey on a chain. There, I think that I don't know who that one is, but yeah, that's definitely him.
And then there's shady character in the background too.
It's like his eunuch or something.
So yeah, Olaf came to mind because Olaf has the carrot nose. So we have a character with a golden nose, which is like 14 carat nose.
Oh, there you go.
And then Olaf is iconic for breaking apart and reconfiguring in different ways. He's like a walking Jackson Pollock or something. He like breaks himself into a different configuration of Olaf, which is what Tycho Brahe's cosmology does to your imagination. It literally dissolves what you thought you knew was the Olaf system, and you have to reconfigure a new Olaf system in your mind's eye over and over. It's really fascinating. I love Tycho Brahe. What were you going to say, Dan?
He's a snowman.
There it knows.
That's right. That's totally what's up.
But don't you think that's crazy that like you have the shiny nose character, you have Rudolph II, and then you have this drunken elk, or elks and reindeer. Like, I mean, they're pretty close. And then I'm like, that sounds like the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer story, like all wrapped in one.
And it's helping with your sight. It's helping with vision. Rudolph gives clear vision for Santa, to help him see. So I think there's
kind of the role of Tycho on the magical circle, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, dude, super cool guy, because he still has the Tycho Observatory website where you can go and look at the elliptical patterns, and it shows you like the geometrical patterns that are being made of the planets as they go. It's super fun to play around with.
Yes. Okay, so a while back I learned about a secret society called the Mensurs, Mensurs, and it's a German sect of fencers. They're a secret society of sword fencing.
Oh shit! Okay.
And so you can look into them. They're very fascinating. It's well worth taking a couple hours to research. But they have a style of fencing that is very much focused on the face, on facial scars, as almost a sign of your progression through the ranks. And so they wear a special kind of garb. They wear a neck guard and a pair of goggles with a nose shield. So it's specifically designed to if it does scar, and they're like all trained medics on hand. Everybody in the society is like locked and loaded, ready to stitch you up. But different scars actually tell different stories. So between two Mensurs, you'll actually see a scar up here, and you can actually have a conversation like a chess game and you can discuss how that cut was made because of the shape of it. So I just wanted to throw that in the mix, that Tycho Brahe having bragging rights about a nose scar may indicate that he was an aspiring mensur. And they had other international counterparts. So he could have been like a Danish wannabe version of the German mensurs. You know what I mean? There would have been fencing clubs in other countries, is my point.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
what?
absolutely. I mean, you know that we know that like fencing is like this like
Yes.
hoity-toity type of thing, you know, like only the rich people are allowed to fence. And
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. And so if you
feudalism.
study this, if you study this style of fighting, they're not allowed to make facial expressions. They have to be completely dull-faced while fighting for their life and almost dying at every move. So you
I
have to
heard
keep a
this.
dull face.
I heard the same sort of story with some of the Nazis that came over from Germany to NASA and into the government, but some of them had scars on their faces from this
You
secret
got it.
society where they would fence each other and they would get these scars across their
Yes.
faces. Is
Yes.
that the same? Is that the same thing?
That's the same thing. It's all face
Okay.
oriented.
Yeah.
It's a face off. It's all face oriented. And there's a whole culture behind it that they can signal each other in public and nobody knows that there's two people who are in the know. But another thing about their style is it's one-handed. So they literally put the other hand in their belt or their
one hand behind the back.
behind the back. And sometimes they'll even have one of their homies come and lock elbows to make sure the second hand doesn't get in the mix. So it's all extremely stylized, and there's a lot of culture kind of baked into it. But I'm thinking Tycho Brahe might have been, putting this in his bio might indicate that he was, in those fencing clubs, so to say.
Yeah, I mean, I would not be surprised by any means. The school he was going to at this time was like a super hoity-toity school. The thing that they were arguing about was like supremely nerdy and like heavily into physics and mathematics. So it's just like I could imagine it'd be like, "Oh, well, you won't badge me in a Monsieur, will you?" It's like, "Yes, I will."
Totally. Homie, can you pull up that last graphic I sent you? And then I think I got a slide.
Yeah, man.
After this one
we'll do
we're
the
good to
rappy.
I have one final thought as you're pulling that up. Morgan sent me a clause. What clause means? A clause is like an agreement or a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put that together with a saint clause, then it's like a contract for sainthood against like the pagan orientation of Odin, I guess, and turning it into Saint Nicholas.
Oh,
like we signed over the deed. Like,
yeah,
we're done
I
with
like
you,
that.
Odin.
I've often associated that with the sea laws, with like the addition of the fusion of Scorpio and Libra. They're essentially one constellation that's been divided up. So it's like they're shoehorning the zodiac to fit into the 12. The Catholic 12. But there's sea laws in Cancer as well because it's a crab. So there's claws in both of them.
Yeah.
Pincer.
Classic pincer maneuver. So when the homie was telling me about let's riff on this one real quick. So a while back, I realized that there's a Camel constellation, and it's literally pointing its head at the North Star, which gives a whole new context to the phrase, "It is easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle," because the needle points at the North Star, "than for someone who is rich to enter the kingdom of God." So I just thought I'd share that wonderful find that the camels are pointing their head at the eye of the needle, at the North Star, where the needle is pointing on a compass. But also Cephas, this emperor constellation, he is shaped just like the manger. He's shaped exactly in the shape of a house. He's a 5-sided house-shaped constellation, and it's right there under the North Star. So I just thought I'd share that the manger story is alive and well, potentially, in a North Star orientation, because there's a camel right next to the manger, which is basically the nativity scene being played out there. And then Cassiopeia is a sacred goddess figure. She would be like Mary there, right next to the manger. So yeah, all the nativity scene is played out conceivably with the ingredients there of the North Star. Can you zip to the next one though, homie?
Yeah. Sorry, I was looking at that quote because I'd never heard that quote, but apparently it's in Matthew 19:24.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It says that exact quote.
Yes, that's a Bible. That's Jesus telling people about getting into heaven, and it blows my mind that the camel's head is like almost like God is up there taking the head of a camel and trying to push it through the needle of the North Star. It's kind of cute. But this one, it was just kind of fascinating because way back when Homie was studying Tycho Brahe, on the same day that Homie is on a Tycho Brahe dive, I'm on a whole nother weave of my own. Can you zoom in a little?
Oh, and you got the uranium here, I see.
Yes.
Oh.
So Homie is digging in on Tycho Brahe, and I'm doing this Enneagram project where I've put the deities of the Greek pantheon into their characteristical placement on the Enneagram personality spectrum. And on this day, I'm getting all these confirmations in my research that the planet uranium, which is correspondent with the number 6 on the Enneagram, that the number 6 station signifies Artemis and Apollo, these two twins. And it's coming through to me on so many levels. And it's a whole long story and a whole long weave in its own right. But this is all in relationship to these lunar standstills, these twin locations that apparently move slightly in their own way. They have their own cycle. But so I'm putting Artemis and Apollo in their oppositional placement in, like we talked about earlier. The one is in Taurus. It's the north node. It's the Odin's home, or the Odin throne. And the south node is Odin's house. And I'm corresponding them to these sacred twins of Artemis and Apollo. And it's kind of blowing my mind because the mythology of Artemis and Apollo is that they were hunted by this evil serpent, this sky snake, and that they had to extract revenge and go hunt the snake down after they grew up. And so the sky snake, I'm coming to not only think of as the galaxy, the Milky Way, I'm also seeing it as this lunar standstill cycle. And so, long story short, there's a story of Tiresias, this Greek god who attacks these two snakes who are mating. And I think that his story is encoding these lunar standstills because he gets struck blind in his mythology. And if you look at a lunar standstill or an eclipse, you will go blind. And so mythologically, I'm corresponding these serpents, these cobras, and these snakes, and these stories about going blind to the stories of the Greek gods and their dynamics in the heavens. And so then I get this text from Homie, and he's saying, I'm doing Tycho Brahe. And I realized Tycho Brahe's name is two cobras on high. Two cobra ahi, on high. Two cobras on high. And so I plug in, my response to him is this number 6 station. This is the sacred twins, Artemis and Apollo. And their correspondence to the number 6 on the Enneagram is Uranus. And then Homie Romy sends me back. The name of Tycho Brahe's observatory is?
Uraniborg.
Uranoborg. And so, yeah, that was like a really long story for a whole lot of coincidences to line up to confirm that Tycho Brahe's name encodes the two cobras of the lunar standstill, and his observatory is Uranoborg. Yeah.
Man,
I didn't think it was going to take that long. Sorry, y'all.
No, you're good, man.
Fascinating.
I mean, I'm not in any rush, but
I like it.
yeah, like Tycho Brahe's island itself. Here's like a picture of one of the interpretations of it, because it was built in 1575, but it was destroyed in like 1600 because Frederick II, who gave him the money and gave him the offer to build it on this island, and the island itself was named what? It was none other than the island Heaven. That was the
Whoa.
island itself that Uraniborg was built on. So just back on the stick of like where polar symbology and this like Santa Claus character with like the Rudolph and the red-nosed reindeer, and Rudolph II being the king of Bohemia and all that stuff. I was like, oh well, at least he built his castle on the island of heaven. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, super interesting, man. But what sucks about it is they destroyed the entire island, all of these fantastic castles that were built and everything. They destroyed it in 1600 because Denmark was that upset that he went to go to Prague to go work for Rudolf II, supposedly. But we
Wow.
just thinking about all the relics that have been destroyed, because earlier when we were talking about Isle of Man, I kind of went down a rabbit hole of looking up all of the destroyed beautiful megaliths that were on Isle of Man that were important to the Celts, so
Also,
we're
we
just
got to point out there's the whole thing about Egyptian history having broken noses on all the mummies and sarcophagi,
Yeah,
the
that's what
Sphinx.
I thought about too.
Yeah, we
The
got to throw
nose
that on the
knows.
table, right?
there. That is a thing,
I made
actually.
a T-shirt. I made a T-shirt of the Sphinx that says "I got your nose."
Nice, nice.
Is it up on the site?
No, I haven't put it up there yet.
Oh, you got to put it up. Yeah, everybody, if you guys ever want to support, we have a sweet merch site. You guys can buy your best friend a fucking t-shirt, all that good stuff. That'll be a good one. I got your nose. That is definitely a thing. I looked up I went a little bit into it. I didn't go super deep into it, but there is symbolism that is specifically associated with nose, and especially in the ancient Vedas
Yeah,
and Egypt. So
Nose
we're definitely
knows.
gonna have to touch back on that, man. We're definitely gonna
yeah.
have to
I'm,
wrap
I'm
on that.
I'm thinking it's like
The
the hidden
noses.
hand is those who have pierced the second veil. Maybe the hidden nose is those who have pierced the third veil.
Oh,
Just a guess.
I think the nose is to destroying the nose is like destroying the knowledge or the gnosis
Right.
is to cut off their nose is to get rid
Yeah.
of that knowledge and abolish it
That's
from
very interesting because this
the family.
constellation that I'm focusing on a lot has a toucan next to it down there.
Yeah.
There's a pavo is the peacock, which represents Hera, and then there's a toucan, which is like the biggest nose there is in the animal kingdom, right? The toucan.
yeah.
I guess maybe the elephant would be next to that, but I gotta cut, guys. I gotta fly. I gotta go get on the
Cheers.
Interverse with Chance.
Cheers, brother.
All right, man.
We'll catch you over there, man.
Have a good one.
Chris.
Yeah, brothers. Merry Christmas and a happy Yule to everybody.
Merry Christmas, Happy Yule.
Right on. Give thanks and praise, y'all.
Gee. I gotta share this. Now I'm down a toucan hole, man. Looking up pictures of toucans.
Well, I'm good. I think this has been a good episode. Let's end it here, boys.
Yeah, toucans are said to burrow holes in trees.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah, with that beak. Yeah, we got a lot of woodpeckers out here, and they have tiny beaks, and they're able to make pretty fucking big holes. And in oaks too, which is like a really hard wood. So I can imagine the holes that the toucan would bore.
I just want to say that we are not doing a Sunday slow burn on Christmas. We had a hard time doing one last week because of traveling. So that's why we did it today on Wednesday. And so we will be back in January with slow burns. And because we're going into the Northwest European Isles for most of the year, we're going to start doing some mythology, more mythology, because we have been doing some already, about different types of creatures, beings, serpents, dragons, some more stuff like that coming into next year. And what else? What other topics have we had going on, Roman?
Yeah, we're
Indy, you got any suggestions?
definitely diving deep into the serpent symbolism and like, we're not talking no shallow serpent stuff. We're talking, finding that real gravy. So, that's going to be a large part of it, man. And yeah,
Dragons,
sticking true
serpents,
to the Celts.
lizards, salamanders.
Yeah,
Fish.
man.
Fish man. Vesca Pisces. Fish.
Fish.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, fish.
Yeah, I thought it was
Yes.
pretty interesting the mare and the horse water connection too. The in an equestrian type of
Seahorse.
crossover. Yeah, the seahorse stuff is really interesting. I mean, when it flows, it goes. Like, we can make topics up now, but they kind of happen how they happen. So however they need to happen, they will. And it never ceases to amaze me the shit that gets brought up during amazing conversations like this. So, hey, just want to thank everybody and wish everybody a happy Yule, and go outside if it's cold. Start that fire, drink the hot chocolate, but go embrace the cold for at least 10 minutes and just be like, give it to me, Oh, yeah.
Boost your mitochondria.
Yeah.
Yes.
Happy holidays to all, and to all a good night. Wake the fuck up.